Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in time. I really appreciate it. We are just about to start session 5 of India Rivers Week 2022. I'm just going to introduce our moderator for today before handing it over to Professor Baviskar. And just a quick housekeeping note from my end as well, that the chat is where you're supposed to put your comments. The Q&A box is where you're supposed to put your questions. Please don't put your comments in the Q&A box. It makes it difficult to track the questions. So just a quick housekeeping note from my end. I'll start with introducing Professor Baviskar. Amita Baviskar is a professor of environmental studies in sociology and anthropology at Ashoka University. Her research addresses the cultural politics of environment and development in rural and urban India. Her books, In the Belly of the River, Tribal Conflicts over Development in the Narmada Valley, published in 1995, and Uncivil City, Ecology, Equity, and the Commons in Delhi, published in 2020, and other writings explore the themes of resource rights, popular resistance, and discourses of environmentalism. Over to you, Professor Baviskar. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you take the lead.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. I'm very, very happy to be here, and I'm delighted to welcome everybody to this final session of the India Rivers Week 2022. Since it started in 2014, the India Rivers Week has become a forum that highlights important issues concerning our rivers. And it does so by bringing together people who work about and around rivers across India, in government agencies, from popular organizations, research institutes, community organizations. Basically, everybody who recognizes that rivers are our lifelines and we need to protect them. As you know, the issue that is being highlighted in this particular year's event is that of inland waterways. We have three important events in this session. The first is something that we look forward to every year, which is the celebration of the outstanding work that organizations and individuals have been doing to defend our rivers and to defend the people who depend on them. This is the award of the Bhagirath Prayas Samman and the Anupam Mishra medal, which is given to outstanding sustained efforts to inform, educate, and inspire people about rivers. This will be followed by a keynote lecture by Justice Madan Lokur, who's been a long supporter of the India Rivers Forum and somebody we look to for his guidance and wisdom at all times. And the last event is a panel discussion on the subject of inland waterways on the Indian subcontinent with very experienced speakers who represent different perspectives. Shripad Dharmadhikary will set the stage for their discussion by first presenting an overview of on the subject. So I will now hand things over to Siddharth Agarwal, who will preside over the award ceremony. Just a little bit about Siddharth, whom many of us know and admire for his amazing work, walking 6,000 kilometers across India over 6 years, along rivers, across them, trying to document and bring stories of marginalized communities and the environment to the mainstream. He's walked the full length of the Ganga and the Cane, and his organization, Veditam India Foundation, hosts some of his work along with efforts towards environmental research and documentation and accountability. Siddharth is also a steering committee member at India Rivers Forum, and he really anchors all the work, the preparatory work and the proceedings that go into creating this event. So thank you, Siddharth, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Professor Baviskar. I am just going to share my screen so that we can take our audience through the journey of the awards that we've had over the years. Just 1 second. My screen's visible fine?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome everyone. I'm very glad to welcome you to the award ceremony for Bhagirath, Prayas, Samman and Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal. Before we get into the final discussion for today, final award ceremony for today, we'll want to take you through the past awardees who we've identified over the years, who we've had the honor to associate our name with for their work. Um, to give you an introduction for those who may not be aware, the Bhagirath Prayas Samman Award was constituted in 2014 along with the first India Rivers Week event. And it was constituted to recognize the unsung heroes who do tremendous work and continuous work towards protection and conservation of rivers in India. Um, Much later, and unfortunately, because of the passing of Sri Anupam Mishra, who used to chair the jury of Bhagirath Prayas Samman Award, we instituted a award in his memory, given the same values that he used to live with, to celebrate the journalists and media professionals who have done exemplary work in documenting our rivers, documenting people's struggles, keeping the government to account over the years, and who've done it over time, who've done it in various forms, and who've diligently worked on this issue for years. Um, the award is decided by the jury. After the nominations come in, we present them to the jury. The jury sits and discusses this, deliberates over it. And you can see on your screen the jury that we have for the two awards. We have some of the jury members present here with us today. I'm not reading out the names of the jury, but or I'll read the names, but I'll not read out their descriptions because I think the accomplishment is not justified in these small descriptors. So Sri Shashi Shekhar, Dr. Amita Baviskar, Dr. S. Janakarajan, Sri Abhilash Khandekar, uh, Sri Vishwanath S, and Sri Himanshu Thakkar. And they've all, over the years, done incredible work in the space of the same values that I've described for the two awards, basically. Starting with 2014, which is when India Rivers Week gave away the first Bhagirath Prayas Samman. I'm going to let you see the screen because there is a paucity of time today, so I'm not going to read the details for every all the years preceding this, but I'll let you take a look at the screen for 2014. Then 2015, we had 4 awardees. The initial influx of the number of awardees that we had, the number of people we had, and who we saw that were working on rivers and not recognized. It gave us that space to recognize so many people. 2016, again, you can see how the expanse of where the awards have been given has increased to from Bihar to Delhi to Manipur to Himachal Pradesh. So different parts of the country where we've tried to identify unsung heroes. 2017, this was India Rivers Day, 2017, where we identified awardees from Rajasthan and Kerala. 2018, where we recognized Sri Vishwanath S from Karnataka, Bangalore, Karnataka, who's now also part of the jury. So it's been a process where we now look up to our past winners to guide us in various ways, to continue to inspire us with their work. And it's been incredible to see how we've continued to be inspired by their work over time. And it's the spectrum of our awardees have been from grassroots workers to community members to experts to engineers who've all in their own ways provided a space for others to also come together and work on these challenges that our rivers face. Taking you to 2020, where we had both of our Bhagirath Prayas Samman awardees from Pune, working on the Mula Mutha rivers. Incredible work of defending the river through activism, through community engagement, through legal efforts. 2021, which was last year, where we recognized the work of Rajkumar Sinha ji and ACT, affected citizens of Tista from Sikkim. So I'm going to leave you with a screen right now of all the awardees from all the years, um, who we again have had the honor of associating our name with. And with this, I'll also show you something where I want those, or we want those who are listening to this session to help us. This is the map of the different states from which our awardees till now have come from. We tried to also recognize, open our eyes to a wider geographical distribution. But you see, there's a lot of states from which we've not been able to identify heroes yet, or not been able to award them yet. And which is where your role as somebody who's part of this community, to tell us who is it from these states that we're not looking at? Who are these people from these states who are working diligently on river conservation and who we should identify? So that is something that we ask you to do. We annually we release the nomination forms for Bhagirath, Prayas, Samman and Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal. And we really invite you to send in your um, nominations from all these places where we've not yet identified unsung heroes. From BPS, I'll quickly take you to Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal, which was instituted in 2017. Our first award was given to Arti Kumar Rao. This was India Rivers Day 2017, following which in 2018 at India Rivers Week 2018, the award was given to Arun Tiwari. Again, if you see between Arti and Arun, the form of their communication is so varied, but the fact that they diligently have been working on this issue for years and documenting and sharing it through various platforms with others. Makaran Purohit, who won the award in 2020, has made documentary films. He's written for India Water Portal. So again, the richness of how these different awardees over the past many years have worked diligently and got into different kinds of audiences. These are our winners from last year, Abhay Mishra and Athar, who've again done exemplary work where they come from. I might have seemed rushed while taking you through this, but again, because of the paucity of time, I'm going to uh, just show you this slide of our winners of Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal over the past few years. And again, while I've not made a map yet, the challenge also is that we have a long way to go with AMM, Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal, that we've already covered with the BPS award. So again, we request you to help us identify those who worked on these issues over time, those who've documented and talked about river-related issues, conservation issues of rivers, and nominate them for next year's award. Because unless you help us build a larger pool of applications, we will not be able to identify and award and associate our names with these incredible people who are working on various river-related issues and documenting them. With this, the introduction of the award is sort of complete. And now we will move into the announcement of this year's award. So just give me one moment while I put the information on my screen. Um, Before I do that, just to share with you the flow of how this is going to work, I will announce the awardee for each award, request them to switch on their videos. We'll put them on the screen. We have a citation prepared for each of our awardees, which we will read out. And then we will have a short acceptance speech from either the person or the representative of that organization. So we'll go one award after one award. The awardees are requested to keep their speech to 3 minutes, which is the time we've allotted to them. So I'm going to, and with great honor, sorry. So with great honor, we present our first award for 2022 India Rivers Week 2022 for the Bhagirath Prayas Samman. And we usually have Bhagirath Prayas Samman for an organization and an individual. So we're first going to announce the organizational award. The Bhagirath Prayas Samman Award 2022 for organization goes to Society for Creative Opportunities and Participatory Ecosystems from Calcutta. We have Dhrubadi from Scope who has joined us. Dhrubadi, I'd like for you to switch on your video. Right. Thank you for joining us, Dhrubadi. I believe we have other members from Scope who have joined us today in this session. Congratulations to all of you. I will give you the space to talk about, give a speech for this. But first, I'll read out the citation that has been prepared by the jury. The organizing committee of the India Rivers Week 2022 has great pleasure in awarding the Bhagirath Prayas Samman 2022 to Society for Creative Opportunities and Participatory Ecosystems from Calcutta, in appreciation of their dedicated efforts to work with local communities and city people to protect the East Kolkata wetlands in West Bengal. The East Kolkata wetlands are a unique example of an ecosystem that naturally biodegrades the sewage of Kolkata city without using chemicals or energy-intensive sewage treatment plants. In the process, they create employment for thousands of farmers and fisher people, provide cheap, nutritious food to the people of Kolkata, protect the city from floods, recharge groundwater, and save the Hooghly and Kulti rivers from pollution. Founded by the late Dhrubajyoti Ghosh, known as the ecologist of the poor, Scope has been fighting for decades to save this ecosystem from encroachment and destruction. It successfully stopped and challenged a number of projects that would have adversely affected an ecosystem vital to local livelihoods and to the sustainable management of urban waste. It has educated, engaged, and empowered people to work for the protection of these wetlands. Through public awareness campaigns, public interest litigation, partnering with government agencies, it has defended and championed a remarkable model of social and ecological well-being, an exemplar of community-based knowledge and action. It is our honor to recognize the heroic efforts of Scope to protect the East Kolkata wetlands in West Bengal. It is an inspiring example of how Indian cities can live sustainably with riverine ecologies and the communities who depend on them. I welcome you, Dhrubadi, to please unmute. Yes. Please go ahead, Dhrubadi. My congratulations to you and the Scope team.
Gange Chayamune Chaiva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalesmin Sannidhim Kuru. On behalf of all of us at the Society for Creative Opportunities and Participatory Ecosystems, with an invocation to our rivers, let me take the opportunity to express our heartfelt, sincere appreciation for the honor bestowed on us by the India Rivers Forum on this occasion of India Rivers Week 2022. Since my teacher, the late Dhrubajyoti Ghosh, has been mentioned already in the citation, let me also take this opportunity to dedicate this award to his memory, and also mention to you one person who has generally never appeared in the limelight in the course of establishing the importance of the East Kolkata wetlands. He was an IAS officer of a brilliant acumen. His name is Dr. Kollan Bagchi, and both Dr. Ghosh and Dr. Bagchi, when they were both in government, did the best they could to take the story of the East Kolkata wetlands to the government of India vis-a-vis the Ganga Action Plan, and to the world vis-a-vis the Ramsar recognition, which came in 2002. First came the recognition from the Ministry of Environment and Forests regarding the East Kolkata wetlands being a treatment wetland, which through natural biological processes prevented pollution of the receiving river of the treated sewage. And almost 4 decades ago, Dr. Ghosh wrote this wonderful little report called Cleaner Rivers. And he actually explained and espoused the cause of using treatment wetlands as a more environment-friendly solution to, cash-strapped municipal towns who pollute the River Ganga a great deal, and who could look at treatment wetlands as a viable and community-oriented model of both sewage treatment and keeping the river clean. And this is the message that we carry all through our work. Our core emphasis is on empowering the community that has worked through more than 100 years to keep this system alive. Because as we all know, this was a brackish water ecosystem earlier, and it transformed to a sewage-fed ecosystem with some remarkable engineering interventions that happened somewhere earlier in the 20th century. And our message, Siddharth, if you please share the screen. Our message to the entire India Rivers Forum community is this. This is what we work with: thriving wetlands, cleaner rivers. And there are two things I've been hearing all the deliberations through yesterday and today. There are two things that I would like to mention here, which Sir used to say. The first thing he said was looking at the bigger picture, which is what we need to do when we talk about river conservation and wetlands. And the other thing that he used to say was living creatively with nature, which I think is a fundamental message that needs to reach every stakeholder who is connected with river conservation and who wishes to take things forward such that we have an inclusive model of going forward. This is our message to all of us. And I think this award energizes us. This Samman energizes us to do more and to keep on connecting wetlands and rivers and talking about it. And we thank, on behalf of all of us at SCOPE and the wetlands community, with whom I will be communicating much larger, on a much larger scale after this announcement. On behalf of all of them, we once again thank the India Rivers Forum and India Rivers Week 2022. And we wish them to continue with the incredible work that they have been doing. Once again, our Prati Samman for the Samman that has been bestowed upon us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Drupadi. We're very honored to have you here, other members of SCOPE here, and for associating our name with SCOPE. For our audience, I'd also like to say that you've seen the citation that I put on screen. Apart from that, the Bhagirath Prayas Samman Award also carries a cash component which goes to the award winners, whether individual or organization, as well as a plaque that will be sent later on to the organization and individual. I will now go on to the next award. Thank you, Drupadi. For the next award is for Bhagirath Prayas Samman individual. I am going to the Bhagirath Prayas Samman Award 2022 for individual goes to Professor Venkatesh Datta. Professor Datta, if you're here, can I ask you to please switch on your video? Welcome, Professor Datta. I will invite you to speak once I've read the citation from the jury. The organizing committee of the India Rivers Week 2022 has great pleasure in awarding the Bhagirath Prayas Samman 2022 to Professor Venkatesh Datta in appreciation of his dedicated work to protect and rejuvenate the Gomti River and defend the lives and livelihoods of communities along its banks. For more than 17 years, Venkatesh Datta has devoted himself to protecting and reviving the Gomti River in Uttar Pradesh. He has successfully campaigned against projects such as riverfront development that damage riverine ecologies and displace people. His satyagraha led to the removal of a part of an earthen dam that was impeding the flow of water in the river. Public awareness and concerns sparked by his 2011 yatra along the river jolted the government into surveying the river basin and preparing an action plan for the river. Venkatesh Datta's scientific and popular writings have educated and motivated fellow academics, policymakers, and the public to work for the rejuvenation of this aquifer-fed river system. Datta's campaign of My River, My Pride has inspired youth, school children, and teachers to recognize and value this neglected river. With meager resources but tireless efforts, Venkatesh Datta has accomplished the difficult task of building awareness about the Gomti Basin among its residents and those who shape its fate. His crusade has helped illuminate the vital links between rivers, ecology, and people. His work is an inspiration for everyone who cares about rivers. It is our honor to recognize and celebrate Venkatesh Datta's unsung Bhagirath Prayas to protect the river, people, and environment in the Gomti River Basin in Uttar Pradesh. Professor Datta, I welcome you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm really very happy and also very emotional about getting this honor and recognition. This is really special to me. I didn't expect getting this award in the beginning. And I'm also very nervous because this award also brings responsibility and anxiety. The anxiety of intensifying the prayas, as the award says, or the efforts to increase the momentum and the critical mass of action. The work I do is part of my daily work, going to the fields, talking to the farmers, working with the river commons, studying fluvial ecology and limnology with my students, and also trying to mainstream the entire river commons into our policy landscape. And I'm not confident if I have meaningfully contributed to get this honor, but I feel quite overwhelmed. And I'm really very grateful to the jury members and who thought about me and my work. And I really cannot thank much for this recognition, which is it gives me confidence and energy to continue the work that I do on the river restoration. Secondly, I would also like to put on record the kind of work that IRW is doing. You know, the India Water Forum, India River Forum, and the India River Week. It is not like a water expo, or it is not like a river summit, which you come across these days. It is a group of serious researchers and activists, even academicians and practitioners, who are trying to re-establish the rights of the rivers. It is a collective place of river communities. I call it river communities because we are engaged in water commoning process or river commoning process, trying to bring water justice on this planet. So I started writing on living rivers, and I realized that we are living with a built, a tamed, and enclosed river. And this is a new epistemic frame, which is evolving these days into academia and practice, and which are trying to destabilize the river commons. If you see the large projects like riverfronts and inland waterways, and so many large projects, they are breaking the rivers from the socio-nature sort of fabric to more elite sort of utilities or elite urban space. It seems that now there is no place for preserving the unordered wilderness of our rivers. We are sort of dehydrating the entire ecosystems and the entire fluvial integrity of the river basins to hydrate our economies that work on the false promise of ever-growing GDPs. There are intense conflicts over natural resources. All of us, we know that. But there are even bigger conflicts over our knowledge and collective value. And I think that there's a very large gap between the grounded perspective on nature-connected ecosystems or nature-connected equitable water management and the current practice of water governance. It seems that we are going through both epistemological and the ontological crisis. My friend says that we have almost reached a stage of epistemological exhaustion. No model seems to work now. Disruptive and destructive models are presented as a new water narrative, as a national water narrative. Even vendor-driven and market-driven, market-initiated projects are favored with a very subtler and yet very stronger alignment of private players with very rigid hydraulic bureaucratic setup in our country. Such projects not only enclose the entire flowing ecosystem, but also they commodify and endanger the river existence. So we are celebrating this nature-based, Millennium Declaration on nature-based solution or ecosystem restoration. But when you see the practice, the nature-based ideas, the policies, the principles, and the practices, they are often sidelined into our normal practice. The current institutional framework and the structure, they do not facilitate this sort of nature-based solutions into their project sort of regime. And there's a complexity of real world situation that favor large civil engineering projects. And these projects are damaging the fluvial landscape and they disturb the entire mosaic of the flows that I call, we divide flows not into pre-monsoon, post-monsoon, but the entire mosaic of 7 to 8 types of flow regimes that preserve our river coexistence. So at the end, I would like to say that the research and academia, they are not coming forward with the required scale to counter such destructive forces. This is really a pity. And there are very few civil societies who are coming with action instruments. And our institutions, they have failed to fight the large environmental injustice, or I call it river commoning, that is happening with the current paradigm. So with this award, I'm going to continue my work on restoration of smaller rivers of Ganga Plain. And I also wish to develop a river library. With this award money, I'm going to collect the literature, the books, policy papers, and monographs on river struggles and all the science of fluvial ecosystem that would help a wider audience, the students, practitioners, and the civil societies. So thank you so much. And I also put on record the work that I follow of my friends, especially KJ Joy, Himanshu Thakkar ji, Manoj Mishra ji, Shripad ji, and so many friends, Nachiket. So they are really special to me. I call them river purist because they are the voice of the rivers. Thank you so much for giving me this sort of recognition. And I hope that I would justify the spirit of this award. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Datta. We're honored to have you as part of the Bhagirath Prayas Samman family now. We will now move to the next award. And for our audience, over the next few weeks, we will share with you the work that all the awardees have done so that you can read in more detail and learn more about their work. I now move to the final award for today. This is the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal. The Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal for 2022 is awarded to Shri Dheeraj Mishra. Dheeraj, if you could please switch on your video, I'd like to have you on screen. Congratulations, Dheeraj. I will invite you to speak right after I read out your citation. The organizing committee of the India Rivers Week 2022 has great pleasure in awarding the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal 2022 to Shri Dheeraj Mishra in appreciation of his dedicated investigative reporting, which has brought the cause of rivers into the public eye. Since 2017, Dheeraj Mishra has reported in depth and with verve on the state of Indian rivers, marshalling government data through the Right to Information Act and gathering information from the field. He has compellingly critiqued government schemes that threaten the health and integrity of rivers. His informed and objective investigation of programs around cleaning the Ganga and projects for inland navigation, river interlinking, and hydropower generation has been a valuable contribution to public debate on these issues. His reports in Hindi and English have helped create awareness about neglected yet critical aspects of these projects, which have enormous implications for rivers and the people who depend on them. His work holds the government to account and is in the best tradition of independent, informed journalism. His fearless, well-researched, and dedicated reporting on rivers in the prevailing milieu makes him worthy of the Anupam Mishra Medal. It is an honor to celebrate Dheeraj Mishra's investigative reporting and commitment in enriching public discourse on the state of our rivers by presenting him the Anupam Mishra Memorial Medal 2022. Welcome, Dheeraj.
नमस्कार, आप सभी का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। ये मेरे लिए काफी गर्व की बात है, बहुत ज्यादा खुशी हो रही है कि मैं अनुपम मिश्रा जी के नाम पे जो अवार्ड बनाया गया है वो आज मैं एक्सेप्ट कर रहा हूँ। अनुपम जी मेरे लिए एक हीरो हैं। वो एक ऐसे हीरो जो दिल्ली के स्टूडियो में जो शोरगुल से भरी हुई एक तथाकथित पत्रकारिता चलती है, उससे कई मीलों दूर जाकर के उन्होंने भारत के उस समाज की भयावह पीड़ा को दिखाया जो आज भी दिल्ली तक नहीं पहुंच पाती है। अनुपम जी ने हमें कई साल पहले ये आगाह कर दिया था कि जो ये कथित विकास है, जिसका कुछ चंद लोग फायदा उठाते हैं और हजारों की जिंदगी बदतर बना देते हैं, ये एक तरीके से पूरे मानव जाति को एक अंधकार की ओर ले जा रहा है। ये विलासिता का पागलपन हमारी नदियों को दूषित कर रहा है। सॉरी, बीच में कट गया था। मैं एक बार फिर से रिपीट करना चाह रहा हूँ कि अनुपम जी ने हमें बताया कि किस तरीके से ये विलासिता का जो पागलपन है वो धीरे धीरे हमारी नदियों को दूषित कर रहा है, तालाबों को सुखा रहा है, पेड़ों को जला रहा है और ग्लेशियर्स को पिघला रहा है। प्रकृति की जरूर ये बात सही है कि प्रकृति की एक बर्दाश्त करके इनकी सीमा होती है, लेकिन वो सीमा एक दिन टूट सकती है और जब वो टूटेगी तो प्रकृति लौट के हमसे जवाब जरूर मांगेगी और वो जवाब देना पूरी मानव जाति के लिए बेहद मुश्किल हो जाएगा। अनुपम जी जो हमें कहानियां बताते थे, उनकी भाषा बेहद सरल थी। वो औपनिवेशिक भाषा नहीं होती थी, वो उसी भाषा में बोलते थे जिस भाषा में उनके पात्र बोला करते थे। जब उन्होंने लिखा कि तैरने वाला समाज डूब रहा है, तो वो किसी एक क्षेत्र की बात नहीं कर रहे थे, वो ये रेखांकित करना चाह रहे थे कि किस तरीके से प्रकृति और मानव जाति जो है उसमें कितनी ज्यादा दूरियां आ गई हैं। हम खुद ही प्रकृति की गोद में पलते हैं, उसी में जीते हैं, बड़े होते हैं, लेकिन हमारे कार्य, विशेष तौर के सरकार और ये जो ब्यूरोक्रेटिक पूरा सर्कल है, उसके जो कार्य हैं वो प्रकृति के विरोध में है। ऐसा हमें बिल्कुल नहीं करना चाहिए। और अंत में मैं ये कहूंगा कि ये महज एक अवार्ड नहीं है, ये एक बहुत बड़ी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है जो मुझे दी गई है और मैं आप सभी को ये विश्वास दिलाना चाहता हूँ कि आगे भी मैं जो भी रिपोर्टिंग करूंगा, जिस तरीके से उसमें नदियों की भूमिका बहुत प्रमुख रहेगी, उसको ध्यान से मैं रिपोर्ट करने की कोशिश करूंगा। और अंत में इंडिया रिवर फोरम और जूरी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कि उन्होंने मेरा जो काम है वो उसको इस लायक समझा कि अनुपम मिश्रा मेमोरियल में अवार्ड से इसे नवाजा जा सके। आप सभी का बहुत शुक्रिया और धन्यवाद।
बहुत धन्यवाद धीरज। हम आपसे जुड़े रहेंगे और जल्द ही हमारे सभी जो और साथी हैं उनके साथ आपका काम शेयर भी करेंगे। प्रोफेसर बाविस्कर, I will hand it over to you now to take forward the discussion from here.
Thank you, Siddharth. We now move to the next part of the program, which is a presentation by Shripad Dharmadhikary on the larger question of inland waterways and how they can serve the real needs of our communities. We always say that a well-known speaker needs no introduction, and that's absolutely true in the case of Shripad Dharmadhikary. But just in case there are people here who don't know him, Shripad is an activist, researcher, and coordinator of the Manthan Adhyayan Kendra, studying water and energy policies. And he's worked extensively, as have his have his colleagues in Manthan, on subjects of dams, rivers, environmental flows, inland waterways, water privatization, the coal water nexus. I think what's important about this work is that it is both technically very rigorous, partly perhaps because of Shripad's own background as an engineer from IT Bombay, but it is also something that is constantly putting at the forefront the question of social and ecological justice. And this is, of course, shaped by Shripad's work for more than 12 years as an activist of the Narmada Bachao Andolan. He's now based outside Pune. He's a member of the Forum for Policy Dialogue on Water Conflicts in India. He's also on their steering committee. And many of us have learned a lot over the years from Shripad's writings, his very rigorous analysis on issues of rivers, waters, environment, and development. So thank you, Shripad, and over to you for telling us about whether waterways can serve the real needs of our communities.
Okay, thank you, Amita, for that very generous introduction. And I will move to my presentation. Give me a minute to start it and share my screen. So if you can just confirm that my screen is seen, then.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much. Before I start with this presentation, I first of all want to congratulate you, all those who have, received the Bhagirath Prayas Samman or the Anupam Mishra medal today in recognition of their work. Their work, of course, is very well known, all the three of them, and well recognized. But I think this is a further important recognition for their work, and I think it's also an honor, as Siddharth has been pointing out, for the India Rivers Forum itself to be associated with their work. So once again, my congratulations to all of them. So let me start my presentation today, and the idea behind the presentation today is to lay out some thoughts about whether we can look at the whole notion of inland water transport in India in a somewhat different way than what it is being rolled out, in the manner in which it is being rolled out today. So throughout the last couple of yesterday, we have heard a lot of things about and navigate the inland waterways program in India, how is the plan, and we saw that traditionally rivers have been used for navigation since generations, but and people have been very deeply connected with that whole with the rivers and with this navigation. But the way the navigation program has been rolled out over the last few years, there has been a disruption of that connect, and somehow it is being done in a way that local people are being bypassed. The ecology of and the river habitats, river ecology is being impacted in a big way, and it is done with some very different set of objectives. And we also heard a series of problems or issues that are arising as a result of that. And of course, apart from this sessions itself, these have been talked about in the last few years in the general discourse also. So the question comes is that is there a way in which we can ensure further developing, enriching, strengthening the inland navigation in our country, inland transport in our country, but in a way that we have an alternate approach or an alternate vision? And I think the answer very much is yes, we can do it. And I would like to present some threads of that. And of course, I think a lot of this you will see has also been talked about yesterday and today. And I think some of the speakers who will follow me today will also be talking about some of this. So it is putting together a threads which are already out there. So that is what I would like to share. But before that, let me first start with what are the, what is the current vision of the water transport that is being rolled out in the country today? And if you see, it is being focused on the needs of the big and commercial corporate entities. So I think that is one of the characters of the way it is being rolled out in the last, say, 5 to 10 years. It is prioritizing the use of large vessels, very large vessels, 1,000 tons, 2,000 tons, 3,000 ton vessels. The focus is on high-end tourism and cruise. So, 5-star cruises, 7-star cruises. And the whole talk is about transport of commodities like coal, fly ash, mineral ores, petroleum products, and bulk commodities like that. And often the US, Europe, China are being talked about as the models. In the process, we are also seeing that there are severe ecological and social impacts. Some of them are still unfolding as the entire program is still unrolling. We are not there yet like the US or Europe, where these things have been under development for 100 years or more. But the livelihoods of riverine communities are also at threat, and the needs of the local communities and the small users are being bypassed or are in fact being adversely impacted. So just to give you a quick a feel of this, I think some of this has been discussed, and I don't want to discuss that into detail, but just feel of this. So for example, the models that are being put out as US and Europe, where this has been in development for several tens of decades. So the IWI, for example, says, the Inland Waterways Authority of India says, India has an extensive network of inland waterways in the form of rivers, canals, backwaters, and creeks. Freight transportation by waterways is highly underutilized in the country as compared to countries and regions like the United States, China, and the European Union. National waterways of India are well in line to become the lifeline of the country. So just a glance at what, say, US has done. So this is the Mississippi River, one of the biggest transport channels in the US. And this is just before the New Orleans. So it says the Mississippi River carried more than 450 million metric tons of freight in 2019. Just for a comparison, what is the all India figure today is about 88 million. So you can see how much developed the water transport is in the US. But what is the cost? I think we should also have a look at what the cost that has been paid. And I would like to quote from this very, very interesting book called Wicked River, the Mississippi When It Last Ran Wild, by award-winning author Lee Sandlin. And I think this quote is very important. It's slightly long, but I would like to read it. As for the great river at the heart of this maze, it is now, for all intents and purposes, a man-made artifact. Every inch of its course, from its headwaters to its delta, is regulated by synthetic means, by locks and dams and artificial lakes, revetments and spillways and control structures, chevrons and wing dams and bendway weirs. The resulting edifice can barely be called a river at all in any traditional sense. The Mississippi has been dredged and walled in and reshaped and fixed. It has been turned into a gigantic navigation canal or the world's largest industrial sewer. It hasn't run wild as a river does in nature for more than 100 years. So the question is this the cost that we would like to pay for our rivers? And we could end up with our rivers like this. At the same time, apart from what the navigation program would do to the rivers, it is also very serious impacts on the local communities. And we did hear some of the voices yesterday, but since the representative from the Sahibganj area could not come, I just want to quickly share one voice from the Sahibganj area. This is the Sahibganj multimodal terminal, one of the sort of showpiece terminals on the National Waterway 1 at Sahibganj on the Ganga in Jharkhand. And this is what the people there are saying. This is a slightly old statement which was issued by the people there and several other organizations. The people of Sahibganj have lost their land, are on the edge of losing their livelihood due to the multimodal terminal, and have contacted the authorities to address their issues, but to no avail. A large number of people would be losing their livelihoods due to construction of this terminal, and hence alternate livelihood for the small boat owners engaged in local trading and fishing needs to be developed. Now, this was a statement in 2019, but the situation has not really changed there at all, even today. And in fact, many people from many places have told about the loss of livelihoods due to the waterways, or the fact that the benefits are bypassing them. We have the boats people and the fishers from Varanasi. We heard them yesterday, from the lower Ganga, from Bengal, from Bihar, from Kerala, from Maharashtra. So this is happening everywhere. Thus, if you see, the development of inland water transport as per the current plans is possible only with massive interventions and disturbances in our rivers. There's a clear evidence that local livelihoods are being affected. Benefits are bypassing the local communities and small users. There are large ecological impacts, and local people are not being consulted. And most important, even after doing all this, there are very, very important questions regarding just the financial and commercial viability of these waterways, which persist, some of which we had touched upon earlier. So after doing so much, also, if they are going to remain questions on the viability, then this raises a lot of questions that even for those reasons, we need to relook at how we are going about it. So there's a need for a change in the vision and approach. So now let me just lay out a few elements of these approaches. First of all, I think the most important suggestion that I would like to make here, again, drawing from so many things which people have expressed, is we should focus on the needs of the local communities. We should invert the view. Instead of looking at navigation from, just looking at the river, oh, here is a navigation channel available and how large a boat we can put into it. We should look at navigation from the perspective of what it means to the local communities. What do they want? We need to shift the priority of the program from large players to small users, local communities, and fishing communities, and so on and so forth. So we need to talk about the safety and efficiency improvements to support the smaller players, the smaller boats people, the smaller traders. We should extend the navigation support, better facilities, regulation, everything that is being done right now for the bigger players, we should put in place for the smaller players, and financial support to the needs of the smaller players. This is very, very critical. And most important, the local communities must be meaningfully involved in the decision making and implementation. Yesterday, we heard voices from Varanasi, from Bengal, from Maharashtra, from the local communities. Each and every one of them said that nobody asked us, what do we want? So we have the kind of, very kind of absurd thing like for example, the program that is happening in Kathi, the terminal there for the marigold, flowers. But the local people say, we are not using that. We don't, that is not appropriate for us. So it is very, very critical to talk to the local communities and involve them meaningfully in the whole planning process. Yes, the government has somewhere recognized this and has initiated the so-called Arth Ganga program, which is called as JMVP Part 2. JMVP is Jal Marg Vikas Project, which is also another name for the Ganga Waterway or the National Waterway 1. And JMVP 2 is this Arth Ganga project, which recognizes and says that there is a need to re-engineer the Jal Marg Vikas project by involving the local community and provide benefits in terms of trade and access to markets, local communities, economic enhancement, and passenger facilitation. So there is a recognition, and they say, okay, we are trying to do it. And one of the things which they are promising is all these, small jetties for local people. But as I mentioned, local people don't seem to be asked about it. So we have this, situation where the jetty at Kathi here, I think this, I don't know if you can see the pictures so well, is there for transport of marigold, but people don't want that. People don't think it's appropriate for them. They may be wanting something else. So the actual plans and implementation are falling far short. Part of the reason is because people are not asked. And there is another very important question. Can the business as usual, that is the focus on the large transport, and the Arth Ganga, which is the focus on the local communities, can they go ahead simultaneously? Can we have this huge barges also plying in the Ganga and elsewhere, and the local communities, small boats and all? I don't know. I think this is a very important question. And I'm not sure right now that the answer can be answered in affirmative. So till then, at least maybe we should first start from the focus on the smaller players. And then, if we find that, yes, other things can also be integrated, including the bigger vessels and the bigger players, then we should bring that in. The sequence should be reversed. Then I think the most important thing as far as the ecology is concerned is we should design the program as per Indian rivers. We can look at Mississippi and we can look at Rhine and we can look at Danube, but Indian rivers are very different. So the nature and characteristic of Indian rivers are very different from rivers elsewhere. This is very well known. In fact, even within India, the Himalayan and the peninsular rivers are also very different in nature. So I think we must understand that and look at that. Of course, one of the things is the highly uneven distribution of flows in the year, when we know that there are heavy flows, including floods in the monsoon, and then very small floods, very small flows in the lean season, and heavy levels of sediments and shifting channels. So these are some things which you have to consider. If you don't consider, you cannot import models from abroad just like that. This is just a example I wanted to give of the uneven distribution of flows. This is the Mahanadi River, and these are the annual flows, daily flows over 10 years. And you can see the sharp rise and the level difference in the flows during the year. So we need to figure that in, which is not being done right now. Also very important, I think, is that our rivers have our people have very, very different cultural, social, and religious associations with rivers. Maybe some of these things were not there in European rivers. They were there in the American rivers. Definitely, I know about Mississippi, but those who had the cultural and social association with the rivers, basically the Indian community there, the local, they were removed. They were completely, evicted from there or decimated even to make way for all the so-called development. So we must recognize this connect that people have with the rivers when we are planning the water programs. And we must also understand that large number of livelihoods are dependent and are inextricably linked to the rivers. So all this needs to be taken into consideration. So the aims and design of water navigation must consider all that. That is the second point I would like to raise. The third point I would like to say is we must mainstream environment into the planning. Now, this is should be done for all infrastructure projects. And, I think this is something which is very important for waterways also, that they should be integrated environmental considerations integrated into the decision making and planning of the waterways, and right at the earliest stage, not like an afterthought. Right now, of course, even that afterthought is not there because they are not governed by the EIA notification. They don't require an EC. And of course, therefore, there is a need to bring inland navigation into the environment impact assessment and the clearance framework at the highest level of scrutiny, is what I would urge. And looking at the longer term, or maybe not so long now, we are already there, recognize the likely impacts of climate change. And what does it mean if you want to design climate resilient water navigation systems? I think this is also something which we need to look at. And then the Earth Ganga recognizes this. Okay, so again we come to Earth Ganga, and it says that it is imperative that river conservation and development need to be seen as two facets of a coin. So yes, everybody says that development and river conservation, environment must go hand in hand. And it says it is imperative that river conservation and development needs to be seen as two faces of a coin, which is aptly and simply communicated by the phrase Earth Ganga. It does say that, but then how does it understand what it means by going hand in hand? I think that is very important. And I think it's a candid admission. But you say, then the Earth Ganga says that what is the practical meaning? This practical meaning should also be in inverted quotes, because it says that. It says the practical meaning is that the value addition to society and the nation from investments in river conservation in terms of economic gains alone can make river conservation work sustainable and long term. So this is what they mean, is that whatever you do for river conservation and environment, only if it leads to economic benefits, then you can make the river conservation work sustainable. In fact, this is actually a very self-defeating notion. In a way, I would say that if you shift the focus from bigger players, large barges and large vessels, to smaller players, you would still probably retain the economic benefits. The distribution may be different. But as far as ecology is concerned, if you are expecting that you should also get economic gains, I think that's a self-defeating thing. Many times you may not get the economic gains. You may, but you would have to, in fact, see that as a trade-off. So in conclusion, there are a few things I would like to say. Business as usual and shifting to an alternate vision cannot coexist. At least as of now, that's my understanding. There are real trade-offs that need to be made, that have to be made if we want to actualize the articulated intentions. And here I would like to emphasize that the points that I'm trying to bring out as an alternate vision, they are not just by environmentalists or by some activists. They are actually things which have been articulated as a part of the Waterways program, especially in the Earth Ganga and Mahabahu, which is for the Brahmaputra and other places. But the point is, they articulate the intentions, but then forget that there are real trade-offs that would need to be made, both in terms of whose benefit and maybe how much pure economic benefit. Of course, the benefits would be there in other ways, in terms of livelihood generation, in terms of other things. So real trade-offs have to be made. And therefore, I would say that we need to adopt the twin principles of focusing on the needs of local communities and design and developing waterways with minimum interventions. That is because this minimum intervention is the characteristic of any environment friendly way of doing anything. So I'm not saying zero intervention, but minimum intervention. And therefore, we try to develop the waterways and the water navigation using the existing, that is the natural flows and depths of the river as far as possible. And I would like to end with this small quote. In earlier times, we shaped our boats to fit our rivers. Now we are shaping our rivers to fit the size of the vessels. We need to reverse this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shripad. There's a lot here that we need to think about, and we will definitely be returning to all the points that you raised in the panel discussion that with which we will conclude this this last session. Thanks very much again. But before we get to the panel discussion, we are now looking forward to the keynote lecture by Justice Madan Lokur, which will be next. It's an honor and a great pleasure to welcome Justice Lokur to India Rivers Week again. Justice Lokur has had an illustrious career as a judge of the Supreme Court of India. He's also a former Chief Justice of Andhra Pradesh High Court and the Guwahati High Court, and a judge of the Delhi High Court. And he's now resident. He's now a judge on the non-resident panel of the Supreme Court of Fiji. Justice Lokur has upheld the Constitution in the best traditions of the judiciary, something that I wish could be said for more of his brethren and sistren today. He's been steadfast in protecting and promoting the integrity of judicial processes. He has worked with citizens groups to defend human rights, social and environmental justice. We're really grateful to Justice Lokur for taking the time and his best efforts to support India Rivers Week and the larger cause of rivers and those communities who depend on them. Welcome, Justice Lokur. We look forward to hearing your lecture.
Yeah, thank you, Amita. And before I begin, I would like to congratulate all the award winners today for the magnificent work that they're doing. You know, as they say that little drops of water, little grains of sand make the mighty ocean and the land. Now, you know, your work is seminal in many ways. And I think if everything is put together, you know, that's when we will realize what are the problems that are facing us, what are the problems which are facing riverine ecology, what are we doing to, you know, save the wetlands and so on. So really, you know, even though you may be working in some particular area, I think collectively, you're a great voice as far as India is concerned. So I would like to congratulate all of you for the excellent work that you've been doing. There are a few thoughts, you know, that I would like to share with you. You see, one is that historically, I'm not going back into centuries, I'm going back into a couple of decades. Rivers have been more or less at the receiving end of various problems that we've been facing, as environmental issues, particularly issues of water pollution. Okay, that's only a small part of it, but it goes back maybe 20, 30 years. So you've had pollution in the Ganga, which everybody knows about and everybody's been talking about it. You have pollution in the Yamuna, again, something which everybody is talking about. I'm based in Delhi, so I know that the Yamuna is in a pretty bad shape. Thousands of crores of rupees have been spent. Thousands, literally thousands of crores of rupees have been spent in trying to clean up the Ganga and to clean up the Yamuna, but essentially nothing has happened. But like I said, it's only water pollution that has been talked about. What are the consequences of water pollution is a different story altogether. Now, similarly, you have problems of this kind in other parts of India also. I mean, Ganga and Yamuna are like a test case, so to speak, in which we have failed the test. But there are problems like this in several other rivers in several parts of the country. So really, we need to have a cohesive plan of action to ensure that we are able to save our rivers and, make sure that rivers belong to everybody. I mean, they don't belong to a few people. They belong to everybody, and we should honor that. I think one of the classic cases, of where people think that river belongs to them was that of Kamal Nath when he was the environment minister. He diverted the flow of the Bias. All of you know about that, so that more people could come to his span resorts and so on. So really, I think the first thing is, we have to realize that the lessons that we have learned over the last so many years of interventions through the courts, what are the various lessons that we have learned? I think one very important lesson that we have learned is that there has to be a political will to improve the situation, to address the issues that are pending pertaining to the environment in whatever manner, whether it is, whether we are talking about air pollution, again, Delhi is a victim of that, whether we are talking about water pollution, whether we are talking about, just about anything, noise pollution and so on. So we need to have that political will. How do we generate that political will? You see, it's all right for us to talk about these issues, but really we have to somehow or the other, I don't know how to do it, but we have to somehow or the other get to the decision makers, get to the policy makers and tell them that, listen, this is a problem which we are facing. The whole country is facing. It's not only that the people who are living on the banks of the Yamuna or the Ganga are facing. The whole country is facing, similar problems. And we need to address them. So I think the time has come, and I'm saying this from certain events that have happened in the past, not necessarily with in relation to rivers, but events that have happened in the past where we need to be a little aggressive. It is only, unfortunately, it is only when we are aggressive that people are listening to us. You can see the farmers, movement that went on for almost a year, if not more than a year, and which resulted in the withdrawal of those farm laws. Again, a sign of aggression that we're not going to budge from our position. We've had issues pertaining to the Citizens Amendment Act and so on. So really, I think that, I'm not talking about aggression in the form of throwing stones or burning buses or burning cars and all that. But by being more aggressive vocally and saying that, listen, there is a problem which we need to address. And why do we say there is a problem? This is the reason why we say there is a problem. And we think that these are the solutions that can resolve these problems. So I think that is the first lesson to be learned, namely to be a little more active and to try and reach out to decision makers and policy makers and convince them that we need to do something about the problems that are facing us. Now, the work that all of you have been doing, whether you've received an award or whether you've not received an award or whether you've received it in the past, the work that all of you are doing, whether it is individually, whether it is collectively in the form of, an NGO or a group of concerned citizens, whether it is institutionally, right? You have been able to highlight various problems that we are facing with, the rivers. There are socio-economic problems. There are issues of habitat. There are issues of marine life, right? There are issues of livelihood. There are communities that are dependent upon the rivers for their livelihood. Now, if you start destroying the rivers, what are you going to do? You're going to destroy the livelihood of these people. Is that, what we are looking at? Certainly not. You have, issues of dredging. Okay. Now, like Shripad just said, we are now going to change the rivers to suit the vessels and not make vessels that are, okay with the rivers. So all these, activities that are going to be undertaken and that are being undertaken in some form or the other at some stage or the other, all these activities have a cumulative effect. Now, it's not that, one activity will create a problem, whereas another activity may not. But yes, if you take both those activities together, perhaps there will be a problem. So these are, problems that have been highlighted from time to time over the last so many years through these programs of the Rivers Forum. But are they actually making a difference? That is what we need to try and appreciate. That yes, we are doing good work. We are trying to ensure that rivers stay alive. Rivers are the backbone of communities in several parts of the country. We know the benefits of this, but when you try to bring in issues of development, all right, that's when the problem arises, and that's where I think all of us need to get together and say that, well, these are the problems and these are the solutions. It's one thing to say, that development should not take place. I don't think anybody is saying that. But it is another thing to say, and which is what I'm afraid is happening, that development is being given priority over everything else. That is where I think issues arise. You've been reading about the deforestation that is going to take place in Nicobar Islands. I have seen massive deforestation in Assam and in the Northeast. Right? Now, forests can't grow overnight. Okay. The rivers also can't be formed overnight. So these are, long-term problems that we are being faced with, and we have to somehow or the other try and find solutions to them, not only from the human angle, that is, the loss that may be caused to riverine communities, the loss that may be caused to marine life. There was, in fact, I had gone through an item which had mentioned about an expert appraisal committee report, which was talking about the Ganga waterway, and from Haldia to Faraka through the Hooghly River. According to the report, the fish diversity was affected. and there was a fall in income of 25,000 fishermen. So it's a huge human problem, which we have to recognize and which we have to try and address. So really the work that, that all of us have been doing, all of you have been doing, whether in an individual capacity or through NGOs or through groups or through institutions, I think needs to be collated and presented to the decision and policy makers so that we are in a position to give life to a river. The third thing that I would like to mention is that, all right, we have laws, we have the Inland Waterways Authority Act, for example. How effective are these regulatory authorities? We have regulatory authorities for almost everything, whether we are dealing with shares or whether we are dealing with telecom or whether we are dealing with bankruptcy. We have authorities. We have also the Inland Waterways Authority. How effective are they? Are they doing the work that is required of them under the Act? Section 14 of the Act requires certain responsibilities and duties to be performed by them. Are they meeting the expectations of the people? These are, a social audit or a performance audit is something which I think is necessary at some point of time. The Comptroller and Auditor General has laid down, elaborate guidelines for conducting a social audit. And a social audit has been conducted for Manrega, for example. And there have been a lot of gaps that have been found, delayed payment of the wages under Manrega, failure to pay interest on delayed payments, all right, failure to release funds on a timely basis. So these are, several problems that have come out through social audits into the functioning of a scheme. And I don't see any reason why these kind of audits, which are, canvassed also by the Comptroller and Auditor General, should not be conducted of other regulatory bodies, including the Inland Waterways Authority. Are they doing what the law requires them to do? Are they doing what Parliament has mandated them to do? If not, where are the failures? What are the failures? What is it that can be done about it? So I think this is something which is very, very important to find out the effectiveness of regulatory authorities, and in the context of our discussion today and yesterday, to find out what are the what is the Inland Waterways Authority doing? What are the precautions that have been taken? Now, I'm afraid there have been some disheartening judgments that have been delivered. One by the National Green Tribunal, one among many, and one or two by the Supreme Court. What are the precautions that are being taken? Is it okay to say that environment clearance is not necessary? Is it okay to say that the EIA is not necessary? Is it okay to say that, all right, let the project go on? Afterwards, we see what is to be done. We'll, study the environmental impact. It can't be like that. That's throwing the precautionary principle completely out of the window. And I'm afraid the Supreme Court has done that in two judgments delivered, one late last year and followed again this year, where they said that, all right, the industry has come up, environment clearance has not been obtained. So you deposit an amount of 10 crores. But that's not what the precautionary principle advocates. The precaution has to be taken at in the forefront. It doesn't have to be taken later on. So again, when we are talking about massive barges on rivers, we are talking about dredging of rivers. We need to take those precautions now. Not that, we convert it like Shripad had mentioned, convert the Mississippi River into, an artifact kind of thing. We can't do that, right? So the precautionary principle is something which I think we need to invoke right in the beginning. We need to look at the Environment Act, have an impact assessment, have environmental clearances, and then proceed further. What about, the assessments that are being made? Are they realistic? Are the people who are likely to be impacted, are they being consulted? Or is it that, we know what is best for you, so we will go ahead and do it, and, you will have to adjust. And because what we are doing is for your benefit, all right? It's a part of our development activity. It can't be like that. You will recall the Chipko movement. The people got involved. And they said, no, sorry, we're not going to let you cut trees. So are people actually being consulted on some of these projects? Or is it that, well, we know best, we want development, and therefore we're going to do what we think is correct, and, forget about the precautionary principle. You can go to the courts and the courts will say, all right, there's a sort of a fait accompli. So there's nothing that can be done about it. And you maybe pay, 5 crores fine, 10 crores fine. But the fact is that the environment is permanently damaged, or the river is permanently damaged, or marine life is permanently damaged. These are consequences of, trying to bypass requirements that will protect the environment in some form or the other. So I think we need to involve people. We need to be realistic about these assessments. We need to make assessments in the beginning rather than, post-implementation assessments. They don't serve any purpose. What are the solutions to all these problems? One of the first cases that dealt with the environment was through a letter petition filed by an organization in Dehradun called Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra, RLEK, about the pollution caused by quarrying of limestone in the Mussoorie Hills. Now, the Supreme Court realized, and this I think is very, very important, the Supreme Court realized that you must have facts. Okay, at the ground level, RLEK said, yes, there is a problem. But the facts were not there. I mean, you could see pollution, air pollution, and, limestone, dust, and so on and so forth. But the Supreme Court realized that facts are important. And they set up at different points of time 2 committees, the Bhagirath committee and the Bandyopadhyay committee, to tell the Supreme Court, to advise the Supreme Court, what are the facts that are happening because of this quarrying and what can be done about it. Once those facts were available, it became easy for the Supreme Court to pass the orders, and they ordered the closure of all these quarries. So while, the presentations have shown the existence of facts, I think those facts need to be placed, if there is a case going on, before the court or before the NGT, to say that these are the facts. How can you gloss over these facts? Okay. And very often facts speak for themselves. You know that, well, this is what, the factual position is, and this is what the consequences. It's a normal logical consequence about which we don't even have to think about. We know what is the consequence of that. You put a person underwater for 5 minutes, you know the consequence of it. Nobody has to tell you that, oh, this person has drowned. So once the facts are there, very often, like I said, they speak for themselves, but they will be able to communicate to the authorities, to the courts, to the decision and policy makers about the problem. That is one. The second is consultation with the people. I think the time has come now that, consultation is very, very important. And somehow or the other, I don't know how it's going to be done, but somehow or the other, we have to ensure that those who are taking decisions accept the views of the people. People in Mumbai, for example, are aware of what has happened in that RA colony, the cutting of trees and all that. Now, there is an opinion. That opinion may be wrong. It may be right as well. But at least consider that opinion, consult the people, and then come to a conclusion. You can't say that, listen, I'm not interested in consulting anybody. If I want to take out all the trees in Nicobar Island, I will do it. Why? Because I have the authority to do it. I have the power to do it. I have the machinery to do it. Where do the people fit into this? We can't divorce people from whatever is happening. Climate change, all of us are feeling the impact. It's not only that only some people are feeling the impact of climate change, and our policy and decision makers are not feeling the impact of climate change. They're all feeling the impact. When the air in Delhi is polluted, everybody in Delhi, right from the highest government officials, are facing the impact. That is something which they need to appreciate, and that is something which needs to be brought about, a change in the mindset. And that is something that I believe, that can be done through bringing in facts which are apparent and which are staring at us in the face, either through research or through living reality, and then placing it before the authorities concerned. The third thing that I would like to mention is that rivers are now being treated as living beings in many parts of the world. There are cases that have been filed, there are judgments that have been delivered by courts in different parts of the world. I believe in Ecuador, the constitution recognizes the rights of nature. So if rivers are being treated as persons who can sue and who can be sued, I think that's a great development which we must carry forward. We have two judgments from the Uttarakhand High Court treating the Ganga and I think the Yamuna as living beings. Unfortunately, they've been stayed by the Supreme Court, and I don't know when they are going to be taken up for consideration. But we have to look to the future. And if we have to give life to rivers, I think we have to recognize rivers as living beings. If not the rivers themselves, what are the constituents of the rivers? You will have fish, you will have marine life, you will have plants. They're also living beings. So again, cumulatively, if you take everything together, why is it that a river cannot be treated as a living being? And it gives life to thousands of people on the banks, fishermen and so on, other communities. So really, I think we need to have this, change in the mindset where it's not only problems that are discussed, but solutions emanating from recognition that rivers are living beings, just like any one of us. They have their rights. They need to have clean water. They need to have, marine life. Why not? You just can't have a flow of water as if it's from a tap or something, and serves really no purpose. Finally, I think sand mining is a huge problem. When I travel around, I see these trucks digging sand from the rivers. I'm not sure whether, studies have been done on the impact of sand mining. It is all right to say that, we are giving you this much of sand, but the fact of the matter is that from the time the sun sets, illegal mining goes on rampant. Persons who try to stop them, including fairly recently, have been killed. just drive a truck over them. I don't know, perhaps some work has been done on the impact of sand mining on the life of a river, but that is again a problem that we have to address. We have to find solutions on what can be done, how can we eliminate sand mining, or how can it be sustainable. I don't know, but I think that is an area that we need to also look at. So while we have problems, while we have facts, we also have solutions, but we need to find more solutions. We need to change the mindset. We need greater involvement of all of us. All of us have to participate, whether we are directly involved or whether we are, not directly involved, whether we are fishermen or whether we are not fishermen, whether we are activists or whether we are not activists. I think all of us as people who have an interest in preserving the environment, all of us have to be involved. I would like to leave you with these thoughts on how can we do that. The time has come. The time has not gone, but the time has come, and we are probably in the middle of that time, but we need to do something about it. So thank you very much for all this. And again, congratulations to all those who have done this magnificent effort. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you so much, Justice Lokur. As always, you've been thought-provoking, sobering, but at the same time pointing to us what might be things to follow on the road ahead. I won't try and summarize your extremely lucid and wide-ranging speech, but just to say that that question of institutional failure that's persistent, regulatory authorities who simply refuse to do their job, partly because they've been weakened and eroded by the government, partly because of the way in which there's a kind of studied ignorance that they follow even when facts are presented before them. These are very much issues that come up, as you know, in the case of inland waterways too. And as does the question of consultation with people. You've been on a number of committees which have tried to bring facts before the government. And what we get is a kind of selective hearing. So the government is listening to some voices, but those are not the voices of, as you said, communities, both ecological as well as social, communities that invite us to think about rivers as living entities. Thank you, sir, for also reminding us of the precautionary principle and how important it is to think carefully before we take steps which are irreversible, which will damage what is already an extremely fragile set of ecosystems made worse by climate change. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
We now turn to the panel discussion. And before I welcome the panelists, I would just like to remind us of the main sorts of issues that have come up in all the discussions here. Questions about the viability of waterways, the impact of waterways, the governance of waterways. And very quickly, things that we are now focusing on is the question of rivers as living entities. Rivers not just as water flowing, but as systems that include fauna and fish and dolphins and gharial. As Shripad also reminded us that we're talking about very specific regions and geographies, which include different kinds of seasonal flows, different kinds of compositions of waters, and especially with all the uncertainty induced by climate change, be it the melting of glaciers, be it changes in the monsoon, our rivers are far, far harder to understand and to predict and manage than they have ever been. So what does this mean from the point of view of large engineering projects such as inland waterways is the question that's before us. We've also heard the testimonies of people and organizations who work with them on the question of livelihoods. What happens to local fisher people? What happens to local boatmen? A host of people who depend on rivers in a way that is probably, the extent of which is probably unimaginable in all the countries that are held up to us as role models. Nowhere in the US or in Europe do you have that kind of intimate relationship with rivers that you do on the Indian subcontinent. Perhaps China and Southeast Asia are the places closer to mind. The third thing which has come up dramatically in all the presentations is the way in which the decision making around how rivers should be and how populations around rivers should be has changed direction with both resources as well as the power to make direction or to make decisions flowing from the local to the national. And as Anupam Mishra ji said, in the context of the Ganga, water being brought to Delhi in order to make the Yamuna water a little bit cleaner, he said, "Ye to ulti Ganga beh rahi hai." And in the case of the power flows that are going on in today's world, we see the same, a huge amount of centralization instead of a democratic system of governance at the grassroots being strengthened. Shripad Dharmadhikary's presentation reminded us that the inherent conflicts and contradictions in the thinking around inland waterways are going to end up undermining these projects themselves. The question of economy and ecology, the question of big and small, the question of the local, the regional, and the national. And he urged us to re-examine the fundamental principles of inland waterways. And to help us do that, we have a very distinguished forum, and we have speakers who include, first of all, Shri Devendra Mathurya ji, who is an officer of the Central Water Engineering Services with over 30 years experience at the central government level. He has worked extensively on water resources development projects and has been associated with National Water Mission of the National Action Plan for Climate Change in the last 6 years. He is also the Executive Director Technical in the Governing Council and Executive Committee of the National Mission, where he's been involved in implementing the Namami Gange program of the central government, which has major implications for rivers as waterways. So thank you, Mathurya ji, for taking the time to join this panel today. We also have with us, we hope he'll be joining. Unfortunately, he's been held up, but he will probably join us a little late. Ritwik Datta, who is an outstanding environmental lawyer and founder and trustee of LIFE, Legal Initiative for Forest and Environment. And Ritwik Datta is well known to anybody who's been involved in litigation on environmental issues in the Supreme Court and the High Court and so on. The work of his organization has been recognized by the Right Livelihood Award in 2021 for its innovative efforts empowering communities to protect their resources in the pursuit of environmental democracy in India. Ritwik Datta is also an Ashoka Fellow, and he has been a previous recipient of the Bhagirath Prayas Samman in 2016. And his presence in this panel is particularly valuable because he's been pursuing cases related to environmental clearances or their suspension around waterways, as well as pollution in the Ganga due to the sinking of barges filled with fly ash. We also have with us Veena Vidyadharan. Thank you, Veena, for agreeing to join the panel. Veena is a fellow at CUTS International, which is a global policy think tank based in Jaipur. She has over 15 years of experience in research and project management around agriculture, climate change, transboundary water governance. And she and her team have been studying the national inland waterways, trying to ensure that local communities, small users, and women benefit from the program. And in particular, their work on transboundary waterways, especially between India and Bangladesh, between India and Bhutan, is very important and timely. Then we have with us from Bangladesh, Nuzhat Nuari. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Nuzhat works with Oxfam. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, Nueri, so it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Nuzhat, for joining us. She works on transboundary river governance, climate resilience, and natural resource rights. And in Oxfam, their aim is to reduce poverty and fight inequality. Nusrat has been actively working with fishing communities, small users of waterways, and trying to see how waterway programs can be changed to address their needs. So she'll be talking mainly about issues in Bangladesh, but the Indian and the Bangladesh waterway programs are linked together because of intergovernment protocols, and also because India plans to link Kolkata to Guwahati through a waterway via Bangladesh. So these are not just projects restricted to India, but involve the entire subcontinent. Finally, we have Manoj Jha, who is a professor at Delhi University and also a member of the Rajya Sabha, and is the national spokesperson of the RJD. We hope, will talk about center-state relations between Bihar and the center that have arisen as a part of the National Waterway Program for the Ganga. So we see here speakers who have a lot of experience and insights about different aspects of national waterways, from center-state relations, from effects on the ground, international issues, as well as views from the government about how it thinks about these things, and from legal activists as well. Thank you all of you for joining this final session. And I would now request Shri Mathurya ji to present everybody has 10 minutes, to please present his views on the panel.
Good afternoon. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Amita. I'd like to start from a very basic premise. It is often said that a river is something which flows, right? So, particularly in case of Ganga, although the Namami Gange program, which has been here at the central level with a unique kind of a governance structure. In fact, it has a 5-tier governance structure. At the peak is the National Ganga Council, which is chaired by Honorable Prime Minister of India. And then there is a secretariat to the National Ganga Council, this National Mission for Clean Ganga. We have an empowered task force, which is headed by Honorable Minister for Jal Shakti. Then there are state Ganga Council, and down below there are district Ganga committees. Kind of a hierarchy structure governance institution exists. Program has been, in fact, an integrated conservation program to look at various issues which are impacting Ganga river system. Happens to be geography, in terms of geography, happens to be very, very extensive, about 1 million square kilometer area. Everyone knows that. It has been looking at, in terms of integrated conservation mission, it has been looking at not only pollution aspects, which keynote address Justice Lokur mentioned, but also is looking at the issues of availability of waters in the river. Now, essentially, river is something which flows, and this was very well recognized in various management principles that were propounded and which became the core edifice for this program. In fact, there was a Ganga River Basin Management Plan by a consortia of 7 IITs, and one of the long-term strategies that was advocated by this management plan was to bring about continuity in the flows. And when we say continuity of the flow, ample flow, which is essential to maintain the functions that a river is supposed to perform. And towards that end, although a lot has been, large number of activities have been carried out to bring pollution under control in main system of the Ganga. Our entire focus during earlier 5 years has been to densify the sewerage assets in 97 towns which are right on the abutment of the main stream of the Ganga, and we've been able to do that. Many of those projects have been completed, and many will be completing very, very soon. We have added about 1900 million liters a day of the capacity with these projects, and another 2000 million liters a day capacity will be added by March 2020, and so on. But we have also, in fact, vigorously worked for environmental flow sustainability, making the flows available in the river, the upstream reaches of Himalayan Ganga and up to now. A notification to that effect was issued by the government in 2019, which has specified the quantum of it should be available in the river in various seasons. See, so far as hydrologic and hydrodynamic characteristics, fluvial characteristics of Indian rivers are concerned, they follow monsoonal pattern with a lean season and a season of surplus. So a seasonal pattern for flows in the river, availability of flows in the river has been mandated. That is being implemented by our stakeholder organization, Central Water Commission, through continuous system of data. Why I'm telling this is because it has been, and this has been rightly said by Mr. Shripad in his presentation, that bigger projects focusing on large vessels and also maybe looking at high-end tourism, etc. They happen to be the focus of Inland Waterway program. I don't wish to comment on that. Certainly, there has to be an alternative mechanism, and one of the alternatives that was suggested by Dr. Shripad has also made mention the keynote address, was that development has to continue and those alternatives that turned out. So designing a system, even if it requires a irrigation system for the rivers, which leads to minimum intervention in terms of the design, will be very, very crucial, and therefore availability of natural flows in the river, certain draft and certain depth, which facilitates navigation of those kind of will be essential. So the mission started with this notification, and we have been working on notification, working on environmental flow concerns, hydraulic paradigms for the environmental flows as well, and other river systems. A greater focus has also been on the smaller rivers. Third thing I'd like to mention during my first intervention here is about navigability of River Ganga. Historically, rivers, in fact, if we look at geologically, rivers are those drainage lines which follow the path of least. In fact, they follow certain kind of fault lines, and they have been historically and used as a navigation aids for various communities living on the sides banks of the river, as well as depending upon the requirements at those times, even commercial level navigation has been followed. And the issues of drawing simile with the similar kind of situations in countries in Europe and US has also been brought into focus on speaker. Well, I may not be very correct while saying that, but certainly it's a fact that if we even talk about Mississippi River, every dollar invested in management and development of the river system, in terms of economy, it is fetching about $37 in return. So there is a ratio of 1:37, no, when it comes to navigation of Mississippi River. And then there has also been, in fact, I fondly remember one of the books written by Mr. Charles Camilla. He has been executive director of Mississippi River Commission, and I'll just try to read from a preface, a small caption he has written before he starts with chapter 5. He says, quote, "Can you imagine what this river would look like without engineering controls? It would resemble a third world country. No power, no water, no sewer, navigation, no farms. The entire lower valley would be destroyed and useless." And so in fact, it is true that there is always conflict between development and managing the environmental concerns. But I must endorse and I must emphasize that way out to move this direction is to have a greater dialogue between the different stakeholders, and there is no way that the communities who are living on the sides of the river as well as other stakeholders are duly consulted, and their views also should be and ought to be taken into view while coming out with this program. Another mention was made about Earth Ganga. I'll, given this opportunity, I'd like to put this Earth Ganga concept into a more clearer perspective. In the first National Ganga Council meeting of National Mission for Clean Ganga in Kanpur, 14th December 2019, Kanpur, Honorable Prime Minister gave this concept of Earth Ganga, wherein he invoked this concept so as to bring about sustainability of operations when it comes to these kind of programs, in fact, river conservation program, because this is a pan-India problem. Rivers, in fact, there is a report of CPCB based on the data of 2016 and 2017. It was published in 2018, which says that 351 stretches of river. Now, those 351 stretches are those stretches which are being monitored by CPCB. Are polluted in terms of biochemical oxygen demand level, which is indicated from the organic pollution. So, in fact, this is a fact that large number of stretches in the country happens to be polluted. Their organic pollution load happens to be above the standards which have been prescribed by the government. So, and these kind of conservation programs have to be taken on all these river systems and their stretches. And so this Earth Ganga concept was one of the thought process which tended to bring about economic sustenance to sustenance to these kind of programs by bridging the expectations of the community, their livelihood, etc. These kind of programs. And in fact, we have been working on the various, in fact, 6 pillars under Earth Ganga, and one of the pillar also looks at sustainability of operations by various stakeholders. For example, Inland Waterway Authority, and they have come out with their own scheme, as was being told about that Jalmarg Vikas project. Rightly, they in fact envisage that better access to trade and markets, local markets through jetties and local population shall be one part of the vision. I don't know the extent and they've been able to implement it. We are in continuous discussions with them to see that these kind of inconsistencies and incongruencies are creased out. I think continuous dialogue with the stakeholders lead to improvement in the situation in future. That is one hope. And this this creation of multi-stakeholder platform for discussion carrying forward has been very successful in some of the endeavors that the mission has undertaken, in particular pollution by tannery sector in Kanpur, Jajmo area, wherein a multi-stakeholder platform was created and successfully industries have been cajoled to adopt less polluting process techniques right in their industries, so that pollution at the source is also minimized. Just as an example, I thought I must quote it. So this is all I wish to say at this stage. I hand over the proceedings to Professor Baviskar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mathuryaji. I'm sure there will be a number of questions and comments on the valuable information you've shared with us. I now turn to our next panelist, Vidyadharan, to present, please. I'm sorry, Reena Vidyadharan, to present.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Amita. I have a presentation. Let me just share my screen. I hope you can see the screen.
Yes, you just need to move your slides to slideshow mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of the things Shripad ji and all have covered already in their presentation. So I'll just take you through some facts and some of the highlights of the work which we have done in the inland water transport sector space. You all know about the significance of waterways. I mean, all the speakers have reinstated that waterways has been extensively used for trade and transport in the colonial era. And in my presentation, I'll be focusing more on the cross-country trade aspect, using the protocol routes for trade between India and Bangladesh. So in that sense, even after the independence of India and Pakistan, at that time, the waterways used to be the major means of transport. But the post-65 war and the conflicts later, that the waterways were virtually cut off from the border, and the successive governments' focus was much more on developing road and railways instead of waterways. But it was revived again in 1972 when the protocol of inland water trade and transit was signed between the two countries to facilitate trade under the trade agreement signed between countries. So we have, as per official data, we have 14,500 kilometers of navigable waterways in India, and it's the only means of transport in certain parts of the country. Say, if you look at the northeast India, we have a lot of river islets or islands, where people entirely depend on waterways as a means for commuting and trade. Now, the waterways came back to limelight with the renewal of this protocol in the year 2015 with the facility of auto renewal after every 5 years, and this was followed by the Declaration of National Waterways Act in India in 2016, wherein 106 waterways were declared as national waterways along with the existing 5, so thus making a total of 111. And an agreement was signed between Bhutan and Bangladesh to access Bangladeshi seaports through inland waterways. Again, India consented to grant access to Nepal to access Kolkata, Kalugarh, Raxaul route, Kolkata, Sahibganj, Biratnagar, and Kolkata, Varanasi, Raxaul routes. 3 specific routes Nepal was given grant to access the waterways of India. And there is an emerging discourse on multimodal connectivity in the region to reduce the logistics cost. So why the bus? Waterways are relatively cheaper when the cost of construction and maintenance is compared to that of roadways. environmental friendly, as the fuel efficiency is much higher compared to other modes of transportation, reduces traffic congestion, and it's ideal for bulk cargo movement. The challenges we often see is the poor navigability during lean season, as the rivers mostly seasonal in this part of the world, and the required depth is not maintained throughout the year. So year-round navigation is a challenge. The shifting nature of channels, because of that, it is very difficult to maintain the fairway, which is navigable throughout the year. And there is inadequate infrastructure for loading and unloading in the terminal side. And there is absence of navigational aids for safe navigation, whether it is navigation buoys or even the night navigation facility. And there are shortage of vessels, particularly in the Indian side. If you look at the trade happening between India and Bangladesh, 99% of the vessels being used for trade is Bangladeshi vessels. Now, coming to the protocol of inland water transit and trade, it says that the two governments agreed to make mutually beneficial arrangements for the use of their waterways for commerce between two countries for the passage of goods between two in one country or through the territory of the other. So this is a text which is taken from the agreement, and this is operational since 1972. So under this, there are now 10 operational not operational, I would say 10 declared routes, protocol routes between India and Bangladesh. So here in this map, you can see the routes, and the zone which is marked as active zone is the stretch of waterway in which, bulk of the cargo movement happens in this space between Kolkata and Narayanganj. And you can see that relatively dormant sections of the protocol route is the Karimganj, Ashuganj, that route, and even the upper side of Brahmaputra, the upstream of Brahmaputra, say beyond Sirajganj to Pandu. Every day, approximately 10 Bangladeshi vessels enter India for receiving cargo, and 10 other vessels leave India loaded. 99% of the commodity traded is fly ash, and that is in this particular route of Kolkata, Narayanganj. Here are some statistics. You can just take a look at it. You can see that the volume of cargo which is being traded, the inter-country cargo, has increased in the last 2 years, say 2019, 20, 2020, 21. This has happened ever since the movement of shallow draft vessels was allowed in the protocol route. As per design, initially it was meant for big vessel movements of 1,500, 2,000 metric tons carrying bulk cargo. And for that vessel movement, the required depth is 2.5 meter of water, which is not available most of the time. Now the question is, what's the type of cargo and what are the type of vessels we are looking at? Are we looking at the big vessels, the 1,000-ton carrying capacity vessels, or the small boats, or the country boats, or the small mechanized boats, which are very popular, which are very common in Northeast India and in parts of North India as well. So we need to identify the commodities that has trade potential in a particular stretch, because trade cannot be dependent on single commodity, right? But now the entire trade is that of fly ash, which is a raw material for the cement factories in Bangladesh, or stones and boulders have started moving from Dhubri. So again, all these kind of resources are being are highly in demand in Bangladesh, and hence the movement. And also we need to support the trade by designing and commissioning suitable vessels and other infrastructure. As I said, there is a shortage of vessels. So for small volume trade, we need suitable vessels of lower capacity with all the standard certification processes. So there are conflicts, as it was mentioned by other speakers also of IRF. There are conflicts with other sectors, say agriculture versus inland water transport, fishing versus inland water transport, a coalition of large vessels with fishing boats, noise pollution, damage of fishing gears, fish breeding sites, say in Brahmaputra, usually fish breeding sites are in the secondary channels, and often the dredge material is released in those secondary channels. So this can clog the breeding locations. And of course, there are cases of habitat loss. Environment versus IWT. IWT is inland water transport. And there are cases of accidents which have been reported multiple times in the past few years. So there has to be a disaster management plan, and even for oil leakages, waste management, all those things need to be considered. For the purpose of protecting these fish breeding locations, the secondary channels where the breeding locations are there, that need to be mapped. And this also requires interdepartmental cooperation. Right now, the fisheries department is not aware of this, or the channel maintenance is done by the Inland Water Authority of India. So that kind of cooperation, collaboration needs to be there amongst departments working in the same space. And there is always an argument about river training, whether river training is sufficient or dredging is sufficient. See, training is a more sustainable option, but it's not sufficient in most cases. And also, you cannot say that capital dredging would work properly in, say, in a river like Brahmaputra, which is the sedimentation rate is very high, and sometimes it is even above the water level. So it's not like dredgers can help. There you need actually bulldozers to remove those sand and all. And river has a natural gradient, so the implications are not studied properly, like this kind of dredging, what this kind of dredging can cause, impact can cause in the downstream level. So it was under this context that Cuts undertook a study in Dhubri and Chilmari. So Dhubri is in the lower Assam, and it's very close to Bangladesh border, and Chilmari falls in Kurigram district, and it's hardly 60-kilometer distance through waterways. And we did a pilot study back in the year 2018, where we found that small mechanized boats are very popular in those areas, and people depend on them in both sides, but movement within the national boundaries only. And the advantages that these boats can be built locally, and local boatmen knew the route also very well. And these boats can even ply even under low draft conditions, say up to 1 meter depth is sufficient for most of the vessels. Like these are up to 20 to 50 ton capacities. And it's a cheap means of transportation for passengers and goods in shore areas. So this is the route you can see here. Now, so we actually looked at what are the commodities that can be traded, locally produced commodities. So Dhubri is very close to Garo Hills of Meghalaya. So there are a lot of stones, and then agriculture produce like, ginger, pineapple, oranges, etc. produced there. And Chilmari is also, Kurigram is an agrarian district, you can say, a lot of potatoes and potatoes, then betel nut, or not betel nut, sorry, tobacco are produced in those areas. So these commodities, actually, we came to know that the traders are not aware of, the possibility of this route, because it was meant for large vessels, big vessels. And there are some regulatory aspects that need to be considered, that need to be followed. Like I said, the registration of vessels, vessel has to be certified and all. In the Indian side, most of the vessels are registered, but in the Bangladesh side, it was not like that. So though the stakeholders were not aware whether they can participate, the first time we went, the reaction was like, no, that's Bangladesh, the other side. How can we go there? We are not allowed to move to that side. But this case study which we did, this was presented, and finally, I can say that we actually contributed to the declaration of Dhubri as a port of call, because we received an acknowledgement letter also from the Inland Water Authority of India at that time. Now, if you look at the situation, again, what we advocated for was the movement of 20 to 50 ton vessels, but now the vessels which are moving in this route are of 250 to 300 ton capacity. Of course, the size is much lower when you compare that to 2000 metric ton. but the commodity is mostly boulders, which are coming from Bhutan. And then up to Dhubri, it is taken through truck, and there it is loaded into barges, Bangladeshi barges of say 200 to 300 ton capacity, and it is taken to Bangladesh. Now, the viability, if you can look at the inland water transport sector, why you say that bulk cargo is more, the problem with northeastern states is that there is no return cargo. Like the Bangladeshi side, even the transit cargo which comes from say Patna or so. Now last year we transported 200 tons of food grain, Patna to Pandu through waterway. So there is no return cargo from the northeast side that is to be taken back through these waterways. Or even now the vessels coming from Bangladesh to Dhubri to carry these tons come empty. Right now that the traders are getting more aware, and they are bringing cotton based, which is of great demand in those areas and is used for making blankets and pillows and all at the local level, and it's even sent to New Delhi. So those kind of developments are taking place at the local level. So it provides a lot of livelihood opportunities. You can engage local people in river training, disaster management, freight handling. A lot of capacity building, skill development is required, especially for those who can be employed in the tourism sector associated with waterways. I'll just skip through the slides. Arthaganga, I think many of the speakers have already spoken about it. I'll skip that. There is a need for redefining homes and livelihoods. So there is delay in the payment of compensation, which we have heard from several stakeholders in the Sahibganj area, and there is a loss of livelihood also. When you're replacing a waterway, a ferry service with a bridge, of course, a bridge brings much more development in the sense of connectivity and all. But again, you are replacing so many, displacing so many boatmen and other ferry operators from their livelihood. So stakeholder consultations, timely payment of compensation, effective implementation of projects, all this would help the marginalized communities who are dependent on waterways. I'm sure that yesterday speakers might have spoken about Nishad community. We also interacted with the Nishad community in Bihar. So they have some demands, like they demand representation in government forums and employment opportunities in disaster relief forces as river pilots, etc., because they know Ganga much more than any of us. So the developing feeder route connecting to national waterways again can extend to hinterlands of India, and providing ambulance boat services. This has been suggested in several of our consultations.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Veena-ji, but if you can please wind up it.
So in nutshell, I would say that for inclusive cross-border trade, consultations are important. Awareness generation is important. So proper linkages need to be established between the traders, and all this applies throughout India. It's not just the case for India-Bangladesh trade, because right now they are not connected to small traders are not connected to the traders in the Bangladesh side. They're looking for opportunities. They don't know the procedures to be followed, etc., and the regulatory aspects that needs to be followed. And one recommendation which we used to highlight even from our first studies, long-term hydromorphological studies, to understand the behavior of river. That's very important, because these rivers are very unpredictable and they shift. So you're even for the investment purpose, if you're putting so much of money, and there are cases where the entire initial setup was washed away in Hatsing Mari, which is in Assam. So there are a lot of public money going into it. So a proper long-term study is not there, because everybody is looking for quick solutions, quick achievements. So it never happens. And better coordination among related ministries. Now the government has come with the Gati Shakti master plan and all. But we need to see one of the main challenge of waterways is that it doesn't provide end-to-end connectivity. So you have to depend on road. to reach the final destination. And so that's why you say to shift to waterway means an additional step of loading and unloading, at the point, at both ends. So that adds cost. Yeah, so some recommendations are there. You can just glance through the slides. Mandatory GPS tracking for the safety. Yeah. So these are the barges which carry stones from Dhubri now. You can see the flags of India and Bangladesh. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Veena Vidyadharanji. That was a very detailed presentation and brought us close to all the different kinds of issues that are at stake here. I'm sure there will be many questions for you later. We now move to Nuzhatji for her presentation.
Okay.
10
Thank
minutes,
you.
please.
Sure. Thank you, Amita ji, and also thanks to Veena ji because of sharing the context actually, which is kind of giving a background to our work, because along with Oxford in Bangladesh, CATS has also worked with us. So I will just give a brief introduction what we did over the years. So over the last 5 years through transboundary rivers of South Asia, we tried to work with our bordering countries between India and Bangladesh, with communities whose livelihoods are dependent on rivers, on different issues. So inland navigation was also one of them. So actually, you might find us saying those issues again and again in different forums. Is that we also echoing with Shripad and other speakers that we tried to input grassroots community who are living by the borders, to make inland navigation or inland waterways as a potential livelihood for them, because we looked that Bangladesh and India share a very rich history of navigation, and the bordering countries not only share goods, they also share relations, they share the ties. And while working in the field, while I have visited the countries, the bordering communities, both in India and Bangladesh, we have seen that they share much strong bond and they want to engage in trade. But the thing we find that we kind of in our current policies, the small businessmen, local businessmen from those bordering communities are not that much promoted, especially from Bangladesh side. And though they want to engage in trading, and we have seen that also along with CATS International, we have tried to identify some potential locally grown products, especially in a transboundary river which is called Jinjiram, and also Kalo River in India part. We have seen that there are lots of demand for locally grown products like almond, like cashews, like betel nuts, then also some perishable milk products. But the issue is that there is some demand, there is also supply of these products, but the issue is that these local businessmen don't find enough facility to trade them or engage in trade between India and Bangladesh. For example, as I mentioned, there is demand for perishable products, and through waterways, it doesn't require too much distance to engage in trade between India and Bangladesh, also benefiting the communities. But the issue is that there is no quarantine facilities for those products. So this is kind of issues for them. So what we are trying to advocate is that promote these local business persons. Even the women, we have seen that there are some women potential entrepreneurs who want to engage in trade through waterways, but this somehow policy and system is not friendly for them. And another issues like that, the kind of inland navigation is centered around is the big vessels and cargo owned, but what about the small vessels? So where communities can own also and can engage in trade, but we have seen that there is no proper certification available for those small vessel owners. So this is another issue we have tried to, focus on, which is actually less talked about. And another thing is that we also tried to look at, promoting some investment or some kind of environment, business environment for local entrepreneurs, especially the youths who live by the borders, who want to engage in trade. It might be by trading locally grown products or some tourism maybe, but they don't have that enough, incentives or that kind of environment. So that is one of the issues. But gladly, we are glad that we have been connected with, Indian, sometimes Indian authorities, and also CARS has been working with us. They are also sympathized on the issue. And we have seen that both the bordering communities, be it in Bangladesh, be it in India, they both are actually are on the same page. Sometimes bordering communities want to engage in the issues. They are empathetic towards each other, but the problem is that even though they are empathic towards each other due to political issues, the trade, the way it should happen, it's not happening between them, especially for the locally grown products. So this is one thing. And another thing is that we have also seen that the big cargo vessels, they are not that much cheap, also engage in accidents or also cause environmental pollution vis-a-vis the small vessels, which is environment friendly, which can be cost effective, which has very minimal environmental implications. But these kind of vessels are not properly promoted. So I want to highlight by saying is that as Shripadji was saying that are we actually making the rivers fit for the vessel? So we have to think, and also think of how we can promote the small vessel owners who want to engage in trade and create pathways for them. So I don't want to elaborate much discussion, because lots of things I want to say have been discussed again. So that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nusratji. I think what you eloquently brought before us is the fact that there are local communities who are keen to benefit from the possibilities of these waterways, cross-border trade, tourism opportunities, and so on. And the real question is, how do we make sure that waterways address the interests and aspirations of the poorest people of our subcontinent rather than others? Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Amita ji.
We now have two speakers listed, Ritvik Dattaji and Professor Manoj Jha. I don't know whether they are here.
Amita, Manoj has said, has said that once he reaches Delhi, he will join. I'll just check with him once again and get back to you. So,
yeah. So in that case, why don't we move on to some of the questions that have been raised by to the panelists. And I see that there is, let me begin with one question which is addressed to, first of all, to Devendra Mathurya ji from Himanshu Thakkar. Himanshu says, what has been the role of the National Mission to Clean the Ganga in governance of Ganga navigation? Why is there no need for EIA, environmental clearance, environment appraisal, environment monitoring, environmental compliance, or public consultations for the navigation projects on the Ganga, including inside sanctuaries, which is in violation of the Wildlife Act? So what is the National Mission doing in this regard?
Want me to respond? Okay. It's a bit difficult
if all
question.
the panelists can come to video, can switch their videos on, it would be good. Thanks. Please go ahead.
I'll try to put some facts to this question. See, it's not the issue of what NMCG is doing vis-a-vis other ministries. There are rules of business for conduct of works by different ministries in Government of India. Now, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it comes out with standard guidelines as well as statutory rules under Environmental Protection Act, and they have come out with EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment 2006 rules. They have clearly listed out what kind of activities require environmental impact assessment studies, and consequent to those environmental impact studies, what would be management plans, appraisal mechanism, monitoring, and so on and so forth. So I'm not questioning why this inland waterways project for National Waterway number 1 has not come under ambit of EIA notification, and why it has not been monitored or appraised. Adequate reflections on this part has been given. This matter was listed before Allahabad High Court in Kautilya, the matter also. Then it came to NGT. NGT disposed it. Came to Supreme Court. Again, it went to NGT and so on and so forth. So enough has been said by our judiciary also on that. There is an EIA notification. Things move according to that notification. NMCG, so far as governance of NMCG and activities in the Ganga Basin are concerned, we are quite alive to it. One of the basic principles that come out of notification, which gives us the mandate, is that physical, biological, chemical properties of the river will remain inviolable. We don't find any evidence as of date which tells us that these parameters which define these characteristics have been violated. We have 97 monitoring stations where manual water quality monitoring is being done by central board and state board also, and bi-monthly samples are taken, and there have been 6 rounds of no more than that, 8 rounds of biomonitoring in the Ganga undertaken, and there are 76 real-time water quality stations. So data, a very intense time interval of almost every an hour. So those data we have been continuously turning up those data. That doesn't suggest that any of these parameters have been aggravated. We'll certainly look into it if there are specific cases to that.
I see. Thank you for that. As it happens, there's another question to you, Madhurya-ji, which is about specific cases. And this is about the NMCG being either consulted by the Inland Waterways Authority, or it's the interventions on of the NMCG. This is from Shri Bhim, who points to specific instances, like, for instance, the Ganga Canal disaster in Kashi. You can read this in the Q&A, which was washed away with floods last year, and tremendous loss of public money. And what have been the lessons that have been learned from this? How has responsibility been fixed? Has any action being taken? Have any lessons being actually institutionalized into the processes? He has another question about specifically Bateshwar in Agra, where motorized boats have affected turtles and fish because they get stuck in the fans and they get killed. Specifics also of water taxi projects and whether they are viable when the river lacks flows, or in Delhi, in Yamuna, with the Yamuna, with Brindavan, where the river is again in a highly polluted state. So I think all of these questions, which are about the adverse impacts of navigation and dredging on aquatic life, on the kinds of safety issues that Veena Vidyathar ji also brought up. If you could please just tell us about how the NMCG works with the Inland Waterways authorities, I think we would be that would be particularly valuable, because you know both the organizations well, and have worked in that capacity.
See, we don't we Inland Waterway Authority is one of our stakeholders. As I've said, they have been implementing one component of Earth Ganga, and the project name again Jalmarg Gas Project. They proposed it to cabinet, etc. This is how this working relationship with Inland Waterways, our working relationship with Inland Waterways Authority is. Well, theoretically, yes, they should have consulted NMCG before going ahead with the construction of jetties. And in fact, this project happens to be too capital intensive, has vast implications. They should have theoretically consulted us, which they didn't. And we are keeping watch on their activities. As I've said, we don't find any adverse impact vis-a-vis various activities IWA has taken on the river Ganga quality, whether it is physical, biochemical. And I must tell that we have been monitoring 67 parameters, which include physical, physicochemical, heavy metals, pesticides, and so on and so forth. Plus, biomonitoring is also done. So it's a very, very exhaustive protocols that are being followed. Number one. Number two, number of the questions you have raised, in fact, impacts, for example, about Bateshwar, Vrindavan, Delhi, it is not exactly, dredging or navigation which is impacting the river water quality. I must admit, I must acknowledge that the river water quality of Yamuna downstream of Wazirabad happens to be a matter of concern for us also. We have been very intensely looking at it. We have we have worked the action plan, we have worked the detailed action plan, which is being monitored at the highest level in Ministry of Jal Shakti, and we are continuously working with our stakeholders to see that some improvement happens in the river water quality. That is a thing apart. Yamuna happens to be quite in a difficult situation. Many of the participants know it for themselves. The reasons are many. I don't wish to go into all those reasons in detail. And then there is one question on fishes and aquatic species getting caught in the propeller or those kind of blades. If there are specific instances, I'm not aware of it. I mean, that incident, but I'm not aware of it. Had it been so, we would try to bring in our regulatory function to see that some kind of precaution is taken while those activities are taken. But I must tell you, ma'am, that River Ganga happens to be home to 143 different aquatic species. 60%, and this has come out with this from the scientific study of Wildlife Institute. They are one of our stakeholders. They've been carrying out this kind of scientific churning for last 6 to 7 years. More than 60% of the length of the river has a very high biodiversity index, aquatic biodiversity. It is home to very beautiful and very propagating wildlife species. For example, Gangetic dolphin, gharials, otters, and turtles, etc. And although there has not been any baseline study which was carried out about number of the Gangetic dolphins in River Ganga, but a conservative estimate from various secondary sources does tell us that their number was less than 1,000 way back in before 2014. And about a week ago, I had been to Kathi, which is the confluence point of River Gomti with Ganga in downstream Varanasi. And I was there with the scientists with Wildlife Institute of India. I can tell it with a lot of confidence that the number of Gangetic dolphins out of all those initiatives have now swollen to more than 3,500. So that tells us, that speaks that yes, there have been some significant, improvement in river water quality in terms of the quantity of the water that is also being bled into, as well as lot of regulatory precautions that are being taken by NMCG through its various stages. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have, in fact, Professor Jagdish Krishnaswamy here, who's a renowned hydrologist and looks at the interface of ecology and hydrology. And in the Q&A, he has a comment for you when he writes that underwater noise studies by independent agencies published in refereed journals have clearly shown that dredging and vessel movement is negatively impacting Gangetic River dolphins. So we cannot at all be, patting ourselves on the back in terms of the existence of the remarkable resilience and persistence of aquatic fauna and flora, because it is clear that certain aspects are really diminished as well as seriously endangered at the moment. But there are also questions for other speakers. I'll leave you with one question, Shri Mathurya ji, which is that Manoj Mishra ji says, do we have indicators of success worked out for the Arth Ganga program? And if you do, could you please share them with us? If you could just reply briefly to that, then I will move on to questions for Shripad.
Thanks for that question, Mr. Manoj Mishra ji. I've been working very closely with him for time in Yamuna. And as I've said, I was telling you that there are 6 pillars under Earth Ganga on which we are working. And various, for example, there are pillars which look at bringing a sustainable bridge between peoples and the river, people-river connect, through bringing in economic activities. For example, we have been trying to launch activities like Ghat Par Yoga, Ghat Par Heart. So there cannot be specific success indicators. We are still working on it. Many of the activities, for example, promoting circular economy, use of the sludge. Yes, there are success indicators in that. How much quantity of the sludge is being tried to be reprocessed and reused, quantity of the water that is being reprocessed and being reused for the process requirements, etc. So each one of the verticals have different indicators. We are still in the process of analyzing many of the indicators or many other activities. I'll be in touch with the Manoj Mishra and I'll share those details with him. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And one, I'll take just a minute because I see Mr. Manoj has joined us. Namaskar, sir. I'll just take 1 minute. There was also a reference of inundation canal in Varanasi that washed away and 10 or 12 crores of the public money having been wasted. It is true. It is a question which we also posed to the state government that why approval of NMCG was not taken. And these things are on record with the court also. Well, it was not a canal which was ought to be a permanent structure. It was a flood bypass channel. In fact, there is a unique pattern of river fluvial hydraulics in Varanasi where a crescent shape of the river is being maintained. So they thought that some kind of bypass to the flood waters can be arranged through this temporary structure so that the velocity impact on the ghats, there are 84 ghats on the Varanasi side, left bank. So the impact of the fluvial impact on the ghats, which is eroding the foundation, can be mitigated or some relief can be provided. So this was a pilot project which they implemented, although it did meet out some of the objective, but it is a questionable kind of a project. And we are also working with the state government not to repeat these kind of. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come to the issue of center-state relations in a few moments when we request Professor Manoj Jha to speak of this in relation to inland waterways. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. I will turn to you after one question, which is from Deepanjana Maulik and addressed to Shripad Dharmadhikary. And the question is that that Deepanjana asks is about whether the objectives that your presentation mentioned should be augmented by two other ones. One is increasing the efficiency of smaller vessels, and second, altering BAU by limiting large cargo transport as per real-time carrying capacity. If you would please answer, Shripad.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I think Deepanjan, I think that's a very important question, and so I would like to start with this twin objectives mentioned in the presentation. So these are rather than the objectives, I would say they are overarching principles which I'm suggesting it should be the overarching principles of an alternate approach to waterways. Basically, focus on the local communities first, or prioritize the local communities first, and the second principle being work as closely with the nature as possible, or say, I would say the principle of minimum intervention. And I think this working with nature is also now recognized in the European system as a part of the, looking at environmental sustainability of waterways, it's explicitly recognized. So these are the twin principles, I would say, focus on the priorities or prioritize local communities, and the principle of minimum intervention. And definitely, I think these principles should then, be appended with the other objectives, some of which she has mentioned here, and I have also mentioned some of them in my presentation, talking about the need for more support to smaller people in terms of maintaining the safety of their vessels, efficiency, increasing productivity, financial support to them, but also the other objectives which I mentioned here, definitely in terms of climate resilience, ease of transport, ecological friendliness. I think definitely all these should be incorporated into it. I would say that in fact, how to bring in these objectives in prioritizing smaller people's needs and smaller, like, I think Veenaji also mentioned, Nusrat also mentioned, looking at the needs of the smaller traders, small vessel owners. I think this requires a lot of work. If we see how much money and work has been spent in terms of preparing the DPRs for the detailed project reports for the larger programs, I think similar kind of time and money and study needs to be invested into all of this. So definitely I would agree to that. Regarding second point which has been mentioned, the other objective of altering business as usual by limiting large cargo transport as per the carrying capacity of the rivers. Yes, but I think I would phrase it a little differently. I would say, instead of starting with, say, we limit the cargo transport of the large side, I would say let's begin from the smaller side. And I think, again, what Veenaji has mentioned in their efforts, I think that's the kind of approach which is very important. So as she mentioned, they started their advocacy by advocating for 20 to 50 ton vessels. Okay, what was accepted was 250 to 300, but I think instead of trying to say that, okay, let's not have 2000, let's not go from the negative side, let's go from the positive side. And I think that approach is more important. And again, I think that also needs to be backed up by detailed studies. So when we say that, okay, let's start by 20 to 50 ton vessels, or let's start by smaller. So what are these smaller ones? Why do we say this is small? Would that definition of what is small and what is, I would use the word appropriate rather than, saying a specific size. And that notion of what is appropriate for the river there would come from, again, the two overarching principles. What is appropriate for the river or for the natural conditions there, with some minimal intervention. I'm not saying zero intervention. And second, what is appropriate or what is needed by the local community. So I think let us try and define the appropriateness from this angle, and use that as a starting point, rather than saying let us come from the top down and say isko limit karo, usko limit karo. I think I would suggest that approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Shripad. Clearly, there's a lot here to discuss in terms of the way in which the principles that you enunciated have to be worked out at different scales. And this is a much larger conversation. And I'm so glad that a beginning has been made to look at it in a comprehensive way with this particular year's forum. I would now like to request Professor Manoj Jha, who was unfortunately delayed from joining the panel and hearing the other speakers. Manoj, we look forward to hearing your views, especially on this contentious issue of center-state relations with respect to the governance of internal waterways. And if you could please talk to us for 10 minutes, grateful. Thank you. You need to unmute yourself, sir.
Sure. Even 10 minutes. In fact, I missed the great opportunity of listening to everybody. So my apologies on behalf of Indigo Airlines and Delhi Traffic that I'm there at the quite, in fact, the fag end of the entire discussion. You know, first I vouch for the fact that if I get to know what has happened, what has transpired, and who took what position and what could be the way forward. So I can vouch for the fact that in the coming session of Parliament, I can raise certain issues which emanates out of this discussion. In my mind, apart from central-state relation, and because central-state relation is on a very, very precarious thread, if you examine the legislations, including the enabling legislations passed by the union government, you would find that the entire idea of central-state relation is not in a very comfortable zone. Many things could be said, but this is not the occasion, I'll tell you, because we cannot appeal on these kind of issues or the larger parameter, invoking the principles of central-state relation, which I believe in last couple of years had been compromised to a great extent. There are concerns in my mind, whatever little I understood, coming from the Bihar situation with respect to Farakka. The Chief Minister had said very clearly that excessive silt deposition downstream, then we have issues of soil erosion, then there are issues of impact on flora and fauna. And finally, the most important one, which concerns me as a citizen of this country, and as a member of parliament, that in last couple of years, we have seen environmental clearances have been actually given as a tool without much examination, saying in the name of ease of doing business. And I tell you, that concerns me apart from center-state relationship. I wish I had attended everybody, I had heard everybody, but I'm sure that this conversation is not going to end today, because it involves larger concerns. Apart from the fancy idea of crews taking somebody from here to there, I mean, that's a very fancy idea. But these are times of fancy ideas. People don't spend much time. What are the processes involved? What shall be the final outcome? How it shall impact the existing structures, and so on and so forth. So I'll just stop here. Again, reiterating that whatever discussion has taken place, if we sit again, and if you want me, I can raise those concerns on the floor of the House in the coming session itself, which begins on 7th of December. Thank you very much. I once again apologize for joining very, very late.
Thank you, Professor Jha. You've raised two really important questions, which, as you rightly said, aren't going away anytime soon. One of them is the issue of federalism. What is happening to the structure that of governance and shared and different responsibilities defined by our constitution? And the second important question, which is that larger one about the ecological and other effects of inland waterways, which need to be taken forward in Parliament and outside. So if anybody has any questions or comments for Professor Jha, this would be the time to ask them. The question that you raised, the point that you made about the dilution of environmental safeguards has come up expectedly several times as a source of great concern, not just about rivers, but about all sorts of other environmental heritage.
I would like to take the opportunity to also ask a question reflecting on what Abhijit Prabhudesai had talked about earlier earlier in the earlier session, where he talked from the perspective of Goa and mentioned that the nationalization of Goa's rivers is something that's happening vis-a-vis the Waterways program. From a person who's, you are a member of parliament, how does one, for people who are outside as citizens, how do we try and look at this when, again, speaking from the example of Goa, they are seeing that they are being excluded as citizens from ownership of their own resources. So that's one perspective from the citizen side, but as an MP, and also as a citizen of Bihar and India, what would be your view or perspective on that?
Sorry, Professor Jha, before you comment, there's another question for you, which may be related. So it would be good perhaps if you could take both together. Shripad, would you like to speak now?
Yeah, thank you. So, sir, this is actually continuation of the same issue which Siddharth raised, but a bit more specific. So, the National National Inland Waterways Act comes from the provision in the Constitution that if certain waterways are declared as quote unquote national, then the regulation and jurisdiction of that shifts to the center. And that is the provision which has been used to declare these 111 waterways as national. And once that happens, then a lot of the regulation, then the state governments are required to take permission for any work that they need to do on those rivers or those river stretches from the IWA. They have to take an NOC and all that. So there is a dual level of how we should say access to the rivers that I would like to raise here. One is just between the center and the state. So the control that the state has over these rivers is diluted to a large extent, and then there is a next tier of the control or the access or the say that a common citizen has, that gets removed one further step. So how would you see that within the larger a division of roles of the center, state and citizen when looking at rivers and waters? Thank you.
Thank you, Amita. Can I respond? Because there is not much in my hands to respond to these queries, but I'll tell both my friends that last 4 years, just examine the kind of legislation which has been passed and watch the debates. Members from opposition, they have one common point, that you are trespassing on the federal scheme of things. You say cooperative federalism, but entire schema or the metrics of your intervention, they tell us something fundamentally different. It applies to all kinds of laws. And both of them, in fact, were very, very true and in saying that, when you see these things raised in the parliament, and something which was the last, Shripad ji said, that the regulation comes in the hands of the union government. State loses control. It's not only about state loses control. The citizens of that state, those who had an innate natural relationship with that river, they lose control. And that should be worrisome for any nation, any state, which calls itself India is a union of states. So, our job is to raise those concerns. We have been raising it. That's why I said, but, an overwhelming majority brings all kinds of temptation to the government. And probably the temptations are too tempting for the union government to resist. And this we have seen. You can examine, at least take sample size of 10 legislation in last 2 years, and you would find a common thread that the opposition benches have said, why are you doing it? Most very strong opposition comes from southern state, particularly Tamil Nadu, on different other issues, including these ones. So I can only say that, look, it's important for us to raise these concerns. It may not be addressed today, But ultimately, according to the idea of cooperative federalism, someday these issues are going to be very, very important for any government to deny and encroach upon a territory which does not belong to the union government.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you also for pointing out the larger implications of this for the future. I'm just going to quickly look at the questions to see. There's more of a comment from Himanshu Thakkarji, which says that, addressed to you, that there have been a lot of violations in the Inland Waterways Authority's implementation in Bihar, including the Vikramshila Sanctuary. What is the Bihar government doing about these violations, including the violation of Wildlife Act in the passage of luxury cruises, barges, in dredging, in a recent gruesome accident, in fisheries leases, and so on?
Look, I can only tell him that it has been just 2 months. We are back in power in Bihar. So if I get to know the documents, I'll request him. And if he is around in Delhi, we can talk, and I can assure that whatever is best from my side, I'll do and try to rectify it.
Thank you. I'm sure Himanshu Thakkarji will take you up on that to pursue this further. Are there any other questions, Siddharth? Anything that I might have missed?
No, I think nothing for our panelists.
Right. There's been a very lively discussion also going on in the chat.
Amita, can I, sorry, again, can I just ask one question? I'm sorry, the Q&A box somehow doesn't allow panelists to type questions. It only allows them to answer questions. So it's been a bit of a, so there was a question which I had put in chat, and I think if, for Nuzhat, if, I can just ask it again so that she can answer.
Yeah.
I think she made a very important point that the inland water transport is not women friendly. I think if she can elaborate a little bit on that, and maybe if she has any suggestions on that, I think that would be very important for us to hear.
Yeah. Thanks, Shripad. Nusrat, if you can please address that.
Okay, can you just repeat the question? Sorry, just.
Not women friendly for inland
water. The question which
the,
I had
the
raised, sorry, please, Amita.
The question that that Shripad asked was in response to your point that the inland waterway system is transportation is not women friendly. He said, can you also suggest how it can be made so?
Okay, thank you, Shripad for the question. Actually, when we're working with the community, we have, very vividly seen that the women, especially the local grassroots women, they have some potential to, grow some locally grown products, and they also want to engage in trade. We have seen that there is a hut called Border Hut, where some of the women are engaged in trading. Border Hut is the place where both the communities from each of the countries are gathered together in particular day where they can sell their products. Okay, and they have to register to be part of this Border Hut. So some women are also part of this Border Hut trading. But the thing is, we have found very limited participation of women traders. It's because they don't know the registration process. They are not aware how to engage themselves as registered traders. That's one thing. And that's another thing is that it's not actually kind of safe or secured environment for them to be engaged in trade sometimes. So that's another issue. And another thing is that when we are talking about promoting women traders, we need to engage with Ministry of Chambers and Commerce to incentivize those women, and also at the same time, creating awareness among those women traders, how to create a formalized profession for them to be legally registered as traders. So that would be my initial suggestion for them.
Thank you, Nuzhat, for making this really important point, because in so many of our conversations, we talk about communities, but we often don't acknowledge that communities are also internally different, that women have different kinds of vulnerabilities and don't get access even when men do.
And they are
So
prone
thank
to
you
risk
for-
as well. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that into the discussion.
Thanks, Amita ji.
So if there are no further questions or comments, I have a feeling that everybody is just thinking over so much of the rich discussion that we've had today and that we've all learned so much from. I would like to end this session by thanking all the participants for their excellent presentation and for listening to each other, asking questions, replying to them, and providing us with a really comprehensive understanding of what is at stake with inland waterways. When rivers get redefined as waterways, clearly what is being attempted is not just engineering of the physical environment, but engineering of the ecological and social environment. And it is these impacts and how to address them, mitigate them, fight against them, that we have understood much more thoroughly today. So I'd like to thank everyone who presented, everyone who participated in the discussion, and everyone who listened and will go away from this, like I will, with much more information and much more inspiration for action. Thank you so much.
Amita ji, we have the vote of thanks still left by Joy. So just
sorry, Joy, if I
No.
preempted you.
Actually, you
can
could
all...
ask.
Sorry, just one thing before Joy, you start, that at the end of Joy's vote of thanks, the vote of thanks by Joy, we want to take a group picture. So if everybody can hang around till Joy finishes the vote of thanks. So we'll ask everybody to come on camera and then we'll take a screenshot of everybody here, if that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Over to you,
So,
Joy.
yeah, thanks, Siddharth. That's a good incentive to stay back till I finish, I think. Otherwise, people have dropped out because we had a 2 full engaging day. So thanks, Amita. And I'm happy that Manoj ji could join us this conversation, at least for some time, though it was a little delayed and things. And we will definitely take on your offer, saying that you will try to raise some of these substantive issues these 2 days of engagement brought into the picture. And I'm sure India River Forum and Manthan together will come back to you on some of these issues and things. So I think we are at the very last segment of this 9th edition of the India River Week, which we began sometime in 2014. And I think it was a very rich 2-day engagement, very engaging 5 sessions on 5 different themes that brought out the different dimensions of this whole issue of inland waterways, which I would say that has not been so far debated and discussed in the public domain in India so much. I think this actually, though Manthan has been doing a lot of substantive work on this and been writing about it, probably these 2 days will bring us much more public visibility. And what will follow, our follow-up actions on this, I think as Amita rightly said, or somebody else also said, this is the beginning of a conversation, I think a deeper engagement. And I think this is something which all of us need to be brought in. I think we had, nearly 5 to 6 lead presentations. So one very, very good keynote address by Justice Madan Lokur. And I think the 5 sessions also brought together about 25, panelists. And I think one of the things which I wanted to say very clearly is that the diversity these 5 sessions brought in terms of panelists, the viewpoints expressed, we had representation from the academic community, we had activists and civil society organizations. There are very grounded community voices, I think, which is very highly appreciated in all the sessions. We also had a few, policy realms, politics or bureaucracy representing their viewpoints, and there were a lot of diversity of views. And I think one of the important concern, I think all of us, all the speakers brought in, was that the concern for the rivers and what the present imagination around inland waterways will do to our nature, our rivers, and the people who are dependent on that, and how to engage. I think this is the starting point which we need to take it seriously. And I think as Madan Lokur Justice said, Rivers has been at the receiving end of things, and he also told us, saying that we need to be a little more set first, little more engaging, and even aggressive in our campaigns and this engagement and things, which also he said it should be much more data and empirical evidence-based advocacy efforts and things. I think that's the way probably the India River Forum and Manthan Adhyayan Kendra would chalk out a program around this. So I would also like to thank Justice Lokur for spending the time, and as Amita very clearly said, he has been a long supporter of India River Forum and its activities. And I think apart from the keynote address he gave, his presence in all the India River Forum programs, so especially weeks, I think gives a much added value to the whole program, also credibility to what we're doing and things. And we hope that he will continue to be part of this process with us in future, what we do. I also take this opportunity to once again congratulate the 3 winners of the BPS and AMM awards. Hope in Calcutta, our own friend Venkatesh and Mishra for the great work they have done. It's a great this one to have you with us, and we will be with you in all whatever you do in future to continue your engagement on these critical issues. As I said, I can't take all the names of the 25 odd panelists, but they were quite so diverse and they brought in different viewpoints and things. And we only hope that you will continue to travel with us on these issues in future. And I think we should do this together. The participants, and I think on a December weekend to have so many participants in 5 sessions probably is fantastic. And I could see some of the names constantly in all the 5 sessions. So we hope that you will travel with us on this and engage with these issues in future. 3 people and also the moderators. And I think the 5 moderators we had, that is Parinita, Nidhi, Srishti, Shivani, and Amita, they did a fantastic job. I mean, in terms of contextualizing each session according to the theme. Second, bringing out the takeaways from each of the speakers. I think I was quite impressed with that. And third, and not the least, is keeping mostly to the timeline which was set. I think these were important things, and I think it's a big learning process for IRF, I think in future too, how to organize things. And without sounding very essentialist, I would say all of them were women. So I think that is to be noted here. So thanks a lot. All of you did a great job. And 3 people I want to, on behalf of especially IRF, thank to our Avli and Shripad. It is their hard work over the last 4 to 5 years. I think IRF rode on this time. It is their intellectual and activist engagement, research engagement, and policy engagement with this issue, which provides the substance into these 2 days of engagement. And also they worked with the IRF organizing committee in the last 4 to 5 months when we decided this is going to be the theme for this India Rivers Week. I think they've been constantly working with us on this. So thanks a lot, Avli and Shripad, for the great efforts, for the time you spent, energy, and the passion you brought in, apart from the knowledge and the empirical evidence you brought into the whole discussion. And the third person is our own friend Siddharth, who is part of the organizing committee of this one. He was the glue. He was the one who held it together. And he has tremendous energy to do this. And thanks. And I think IRF always falls on him to do all these things. So thanks a lot, Siddharth. And also my other colleagues in the India River Forum and the organizing committee for the constant engagement and giving the time and energy for all this. So that's it. And I really enjoyed all the 5 sessions. And thanks a lot for all of you. Yeah, thanks. That's it, Siddharth.
Right. Thanks, Joy. Thank you for the appreciation. I really appreciate it. Now I will request everybody who's a panelist to please switch on their videos. Just take this moment to capture all of us together. It'll be great to have this memory. Thank you, Manojji, for the idea in the first place. Ipshita, Bhim, if you'd like to switch on your videos as well, that would be great. Okay.
There are a couple more people who have not.
I've sent requests to everyone. I think some folks have declined. Okay, Bhim, I think, is trying to switch on his video, so we'll wait for a few seconds for him. Ipshita, if you'd also like to switch on your video. Drupadi, if you would like to switch on your video as well for this picture. Yes, thank you so much. Bhim, have you switched on your video? I can't see you. All right. Now I can.
I am still trying.
Yes, yes, we can see you now. Great. Okay. Thank you. So I'm just going to take a screenshot, few screenshots now, so that great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We will be in touch with all of you. We will be communicating with you via email, sending you all the recordings, all the presentations from these sessions. We'd love for you to keep engaging with India Rivers
And
Forum.
also probably a synthesis report. I think a couple of people did mention the chat box. I think we should come out with that. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah. Absolutely.
We will do that. And most of all, you've seen and interacted with our winners of Bhagirath, Prayas, Samman and Anupam Mishra Memorial this year. Please nominate deserving candidates for next year. It's extremely essential that you do it from beyond the limited networks that we have at India Rivers Forum. Even with so many friends, we are constantly looking for people who we're not seeing. And that's important that we bring them here and give them the platform that we have. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Prabhat.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was
Bye.
very
Bye.
engaging.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.